Chapter 1161. 1 month, 30 days, time passed, and the world changed. Every day, the 1,000 names on the Iron Blood 100 battles steel in the center of Iron Blood City would change. Killing foreign races would earn 1 battle points and spoils of war, but one would not be able to obtain the merit points for killing the other party's tamed beast. If one wanted merit points, they could only kill tamed beasts. Fortunately, the tamed beasts in the beast training wasteland seemed to be endless. No matter how many tamed beasts were killed, there was no end to them. 1 month later, Chu Mu's name returned to the Iron Blood 100 battles steel. In this month, the number of high-grade tamed beasts that died under his sword was too many. If they weren't at the peak of the high-grade tamed beasts, he could kill them with a single slash. There were also many foreign races that died under his sword. His battle points in the Divine Army Order increased by a lot. In this month, Chu Mu did not return to Iron Blood City. He was constantly fighting and killing. His fierce name spread far and wide. Every race knew of his existence. Of course, Chu Mu was not the only one whose fierce name spread far and wide. He was just one of many. Chu Mu, you dare to kill my golden feather race? Today, this crown prince will tear you to pieces. A golden feather race clansman spread out his golden wings, standing high in the air like a god descending from the heavens. None of you are allowed to interfere. His name was Jin Yui, the 3rd crown prince of the golden feather race. His talent was outstanding, and his strength was tyrannical. Although he was not a god prince of the golden feather race's deity's temple, he was still considered a top genius under the god princes. His sharp claws were stained with the blood of foreign races and humans. His fierce name spread far and wide. There were other golden feather race clansmen around him. They were Jin Yui's loyal followers. Other than that, there were also other races' geniuses scattered around, watching. Rather than watching, it was better to be a fisherman. Watching Chu Mu and Jin Yu's fight, no matter who won or lost, there was a chance that they would both be injured. When that happened, they would take the opportunity to attack and perhaps kill the opponent. Chu Mu raised his head, looking at Jin Yui in the air. A smile appeared on his face, and in the depths of his eyes, there were traces of silver. That was the color of low-level High God Realm Space Law Force, and also the color of Grade 2 Sword Force. The 3rd crown prince of the Golden Feather race, Jin Yui, should be beheaded. Kill! Jin Yui shouted, his baleful aura filled the air. His sharp claws clawed at the air, and in an instant, a golden claw appeared in the air. It was like the claw of an ancient divine bird, and with a single swipe, it tore the air apart. The 5 phases sword was raised, and a sword pierced the sky. The power penetrated the tip of the sword, and a silver light flashed. It was as if the sword had pierced a hole in the sky. It was extremely penetrative. With one slash, the huge golden claw image actually collapsed. Spatial energy! This human has actually mastered the power of space. As soon as the outsiders saw Chu Mu's sword, their expressions flickered, and they began to cry out in shock. The humans, the sword of Gojoseon, were equally shocked and delighted. Chu Mu was the sword of Gojoseon, a genius of the human race. His strength was good for the human race, but bad for the outsiders. Since ancient times, any genius who had mastered the power of space would be able to become a king of the same level when they grew up. The eyes of the outsiders were filled with killing intent. They would not allow Chu Mu to grow. The eyes of the Golden Feather race's 3rd prince, Jin Yui, shone with a terrifying killing intent. Human, even if you have mastered the power of space, I will still kill you today. Raising his claws, he slashed out continuously. Streaks of golden claw images tore through the air, enveloping Chu Mu's body. It was like a storm, wanting to tear Chu Mu to pieces. Hei Yuli had also used this move before, but under Jin Yui's claws, it was several times stronger than Hei Yuli's. The surrounding space was about to shatter, forming a void storm. In the eyes of the others, Jin Yui's claws were extremely terrifying. The sky was filled with claw images, and they felt a chill run down their spines. However, in Chu Mu's eyes, the gaps were obvious. Because he had mastered the power of space, these claws caused the space to fluctuate slightly. To those who had not mastered the power of space, it was profound, but to Chu Mu, it was simple. Waving the 5-phase swords, sword images appeared in the air, shattering the golden claw images one by one. Then, Chu Mu leaped up, as if he had become one with his sword, and slashed towards Jin Yui in the air. The combination of the power of space and the power of level 2 sword energy produced a terrifying power. It silently sliced through the air and space. Jin Yui's expression changed. The golden wings on his back flapped, and his body turned into a blur. He soared into the sky, and the silver sword slashed out. Only a golden feather was sent flying. "Human, you dare to injure me!" Jin Yui seemed to have been greatly humiliated. His eyes were bloodshot and he went berserk. A terrifying aura surged out from Jin Yui's body. An illusory figure seemed to rise from Jin Yui's body. That illusory figure spiraled in the air like an ancient divine bird. The golden wings on Jin Yui's back flapped crazily. Golden light filled the air, and a buzzing sound could make people dizzy. "The golden feather race's innate ability," someone exclaimed. "The third prince is going to use the 1,000-feather kill. The human will definitely die." The geniuses of the golden feather race shouted. A strong sense of danger rose up. The golden wings on Jin Yui's back flapped rapidly. Golden feathers seemed to leave the wings and flew into the air. Thousands of feathers circled in the air, increasing his speed to the maximum. Then, they locked onto Chu Mu. With a flap of his wings, 1,000 golden feathers shot out, filling the air and forming a golden torrent. Each feather was like a divine sword, wanting to tear Chu Mu apart. Jin Yui's 1,000-feather kill was 10 times stronger than He Yuli's 100-feather kill. If it was before, Chu Mu definitely wouldn't be able to resist, but now his figure slowly descended from the air. Facing him was the torrent of golden feathers, sharp as blades, cutting through everything, tearing everything to shreds. A bright light flashed in his left hand, emitting a chilling aura. Indistinctly, there seemed to be the sound of thunder. The wind and lightning sword appeared in his hand. Both hands gripped the swords, forming a cross, slashing out. The silver-white cross sword light cut through the air, aiming for the torrent of golden feathers. Chu Mu didn't expect this sword strike to be able to resist Jin Yui's innate ability, 1,000-feather kill. Therefore, he brandished the sword with both hands, stabbing and slashing. Every sword strike was from the lesser 8 forms void-shattering sword technique. Every sword strike was infused with High God Realm Space Law Force and Grade 2 Sword Force. Explosions sounded, and a violent storm swept out, causing the surrounding geniuses to retreat. The ground was lifted by more than 3 feet. Chu Mu's figure was submerged in the torrent of golden feathers. Within the golden feathers, there were traces of silvery white. Space Law Force, Sword Force, this human's talent is too terrifying. He must be killed. The other races retreated, but their eyes were fixated on the golden torrent. If Chu Mu didn't die, they would find a chance to kill him. Of course, it would be best if Chu Mu died under Jin Yui's 1,000-feather kill, saving them the trouble. As for Jin Yui, they would also find a chance to kill him. Killing other races' geniuses was also a way to strengthen their own race. When the golden torrent dispersed, everyone was shocked. Chu Mu was actually still alive. His robe was in tatters, and there were some wounds on his body, but he was still alive. The Golden Feather Race's crown prince is only SOSO. With a light shout, Chu Mu's figure shook in the air. Both of his feet stepped out, and under the high-frequency vibration, a powerful force was generated. His entire body was like an arrow, and his 2 swords were like wings, rushing towards Jin Yui. The 1,000-feather kill didn't kill Chu Mu, and it didn't even injure him severely. Those light injuries didn't affect Chu Mu's strength. Jin Yui was shocked. While he was still in a daze, Chu Mu had already arrived before him. 2 swords slashed. The sword was executed with full force, and the speed was extremely fast. Jin Yui was shocked, and he quickly flapped his wings to dodge. However, he was still a bit too slow. With a slash, one of his wings was cut off, and blood spurted out. He lost his balance and fell down. Chu Mu's figure stopped in the air, and he turned around. Like a falling star, he crossed his swords and slashed. Jin Yui was in danger. Attack! Don't kill my race's third prince. Jin Yui's followers were shocked, and they all attacked. With a flap of their wings, figures broke through the air, and rushed towards Chu Mu to save Jin Yui. The situation changed too quickly. Attack! The human race's sword of Gojoseon also reacted. Sword after sword, they attacked the golden feather race. Chaos. Hee hee, I love it. Kill. Chu Mu injured Jin Yui, causing the situation to become chaotic. The various races' geniuses all attacked, and no matter who it was, as long as they weren't from their own race, they could kill them. The sudden change startled Chu Mu. The golden feather race's geniuses attacked, and there were many other races' geniuses targeting him. Their terrifying killing intent locked onto him, and his sword intent trembled. If it wasn't for his indestructible attribute, it would have been dangerous. Chu Mu calmly dealt with the incoming killing intent. His body fell, and his 2 swords danced. Streaks of silver-white sword light burst through the air, slicing through space. Chu Mu pushed the lesser 8 styles of void shattering to the extreme. The golden feather race's geniuses circled around, and their sharp claws clashed with the swords. Chu Mu immediately borrowed the force of the collision to increase his speed, and rushed towards Jin Yui. The golden feather race's geniuses were incomparably furious. This human was actually willing to risk being killed by them to kill Jin Yui? His killing intent was firm, and the injured Jin Yui was terrified. Wings were the symbol of the golden feather race, and also an extremely important part of their body. Their injuries weren't light. Kill. The 2 swords sliced through the air, slashing through Jin Yui's body. Chu Mu's body was also hit by several powerful attacks. With a bang, his tattered robes were torn apart, and fresh blood spurted out from the wounds on his body. His entire body was sent flying. Chu Mu's consciousness was hazy, but his will was firm. He exploded with the last of his strength, burning his blood essence, and using the imperial sword technique. Borrowing the force of the impact, his speed exceeded the limit, and in an instant, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Chase, we can't let him escape, a foreign race member said, and quickly chased after Chu Mu. Chapter 1162. Not only does this human possess divine sword intent and the power of laws, but he also controls the power of space. If he doesn't die, he will be a great threat to our race. We must kill him. We can't let this human grow. We must kill him now. He dared to kill our golden feather race's third prince. Even if we kill him 1,000 times, his death won't be regretted. After killing the golden feather race's third prince, Chu Mu's name spread far and wide. Almost all the geniuses of the 100 races knew about him. After all, the golden feather race's third prince was ranked in the top 700 of the Iron Blood battle ranking. At that time, Chu Mu was ranked 990. The difference in ranking was obvious, and so was the difference in strength. There was only one explanation. Chu Mu had obtained an excellent inheritance in the Inheritance Underground Palace, which allowed his strength to increase by leaps and bounds. The 100 races were on the move. Almost all of them wanted to deal with Chu Mu, whether it was to kill him or capture him alive. Most of them wanted to capture Chu Mu alive because they wanted the inheritance Chu Mu had obtained in the Inheritance Underground Palace. That inheritance might be of great use. In the beast training wasteland, the geniuses of the 100 races had another mission besides killing the training beasts to obtain merit points. That was to find Chu Mu. Chu Mu had fled in the opposite direction of Iron Blood City. It wasn't that he didn't want to return to Iron Blood City, but that the situation at the time didn't allow him to. He could only go forward. In order to kill Golden Feather, he had used his body to withstand several powerful attacks. If his physique hadn't reached the early 9-star level, he definitely wouldn't have been able to withstand the explosion. Even with an early 9-star physique, he had only been able to withstand it, but had been severely injured. In order to escape, he had used the power of the attacks to execute the Burning Blood transformation, burning his blood essence, and the Imperial Sword art to increase his speed to the limit. He had flown until he was almost powerless before he landed. His injuries were extremely heavy. Fortunately, there weren't any training beasts around. Fortunately, there was the origin of the wood aspect in his heart. Vigorous vitality surged out, wrapping around Chu Mu's body and healing his injuries. However, the blood essence burned by the Burning Blood transformation required pills to recover. Otherwise, it would take a long time to recover. By now, Chu Mu had gradually understood that he couldn't use the Burning Blood transformation too much. If he could avoid using it, it would be best not to. That was because blood essence was very important. Although it could be restored after burning it, what was restored would no longer be the original blood essence. Instead, it would be new blood essence. It would have to be tempered over time before it could truly be restored to its original state. Burning one's blood essence was actually a means to damage one's foundation. Even though it was possible to recover from it, there were still some hidden dangers left behind. If it were to happen once or twice, it would still be fine, but if it were to happen multiple times, the hidden dangers would accumulate, and it would be detrimental to one's cultivation in the future. Chu Mu's injuries were rapidly recovering under the influence of the Wood Avatar origin. He was also glad that he had taken a huge risk to snatch the Wood Avatar origin that day. Otherwise, he would have been dead by now. Chu Mu could only give up on healing for the time being. He drew his sword and killed the training beast. However, with the Wood aspect origin, he could quickly heal himself. The death of the training beast turned into Chu Mu's contribution points. A quarter-hour later, Chu Mu's injuries were completely healed under the Wood aspect origin's life force. His blood essence was also restored because of the pills. However, the new blood essence couldn't compare to the original blood essence. He could only slowly refine it. In the future, he would try his best not to use the Burning Blood transformation. Suddenly, Chu Mu's hairs stood on end. An intense sense of crisis washed over him like a tidal wave. In the skies, a black bolt of thunder silently appeared. As it fell down, it brought with it an astonishing dark aura of destruction. Without time to think, Chu Mu relied on his instincts that had been tempered through countless life and death experiences to raise his sword. A silver-white sword light broke through the skies, shooting towards the black thunder. At the same time, Chu Mu rapidly retreated. The black thunder and silver-white sword light collided. The black thunder shattered and the silver-white sword light also shattered. Chu Mu retreated dozens of meters away when a black figure blocked his path. "Human, hand over your inheritance, and I might consider letting you off this time." A dark voice sounded out from beneath the black robes, as if it could cause one to sink into oblivion. "Who are you?" Chu Mu asked. "I'm the 10th Divine Prince of the Underworld God Clan." The black-robed man said in a lofty tone, "Human, hand over the inheritance, or die." The word die almost made Chu Mu's hair stand on end. He was sure that he was no match for the 10th Divine Prince of the Underworld God Clan. His strength should be in the upper tier among the geniuses of the 100 clans in Iron Blood City, but compared to the Divine Prince, there was still a clear gap. Hand over the inheritance? That was impossible. Handing over the inheritance meant losing it. Moreover, the void-breaking secret manual existed in his spiritual world. Although he could read it and accept the inheritance, he couldn't force it out. Taking a step back, even if he handed over the inheritance, the 10th Divine Prince wouldn't let Chu Mu go. Chu Mu's answer was two-sword light. The wind and thunder sword suddenly appeared in his left hand. He slashed out with both swords, and the silver-white sword radiance broke through the air, attacking the 10th divine prince of the underworld god clan. The sword radiance was fierce, but the 10th divine prince seemed to have expected it. With a chuckle, black lightning arcs jumped in front of him, forming a black lightning shield, instantly blocking the silver-white sword radiance. A short black lightning staff appeared in his hand, filled with black lightning. He waved it gently, and a black thunderbolt suddenly appeared in the sky, striking down from the sky. The black thunderbolt was shattered by Chu Mu's sword. It exploded into four and fell, trapping Chu Mu. Once trapped, Chu Mu would be in danger. His speed increased, and the afterimage was trapped, while Chu Mu's real body quickly escaped. He waved his two swords, and the wind roared and thunder shook. The silver-white sword radiance broke through the air and attacked the 10th divine prince 3 times in a row. He didn't expect to hurt the 10th divine prince, but as long as he could buy time for himself to escape, that would be enough. The 10th divine prince of the underworld god clan waved his short staff. His power surged, and streaks of black thunderbolts appeared. He seemed to specialize in the power of thunderbolt. The power of each thunderbolt was terrifying, and Chu Mu had to deal with it carefully. For the first time, Chu Mu personally experienced the power of a divine prince. It was irresistible. Fortunately, there was only one divine prince. If there was another, Chu Mu would be dead for sure. Run, I must run. I must run back to Iron Blood City first. Only by increasing my strength could I fight against a divine prince. His leg muscles trembled and power burst out. With every step, Chu Mu's body shot out like an arrow. He had to attack with his sword again, and it was very difficult to dodge the black thunderbolts. The 10th divine prince had already mastered the heart of underworld art. He didn't need to chant to perform most of the king-level underworld art. After failing to hit Chu Mu multiple times, the 10th divine prince was a little angry. His anger changed the color of the sky, and black thunderbolts appeared out of nowhere. He raised the underworld thunder staff and chanted spells, from low to high, resounding in the sky. Chu Mu's soul trembled. Countless black thunderbolts gathered and circled in the sky like a black thunderbolt vortex, covering a part of the sky. It was dark and heavy, making people's hearts palpitate. In the distance, many geniuses noticed the changes in the sky. Many beasts were frightened. 10th Brother's underworld thunderstorm. Who is his opponent? The other divine princes of the underworld god clan also saw it. In the storm, there seemed to be a peerless demon awakening. The thunderbolt fell like a world-destroying demonic dragon, and the horror of destruction descended. Chu Mu was horrified. He burst out with all his strength, and his two swords danced. He performed the lesser 8 forms of the void shattering with all his strength. One sword after another, the silver-white sword light, which contained 2nd-level sword power, shot toward the sky and the world-destroying demonic dragon. The first to 8th forms of the lesser 8 forms of the void shattering were performed repeatedly. There was only one thought in Chu Mu's mind, and that was to shatter the world-destroying demonic dragon formed by the horrifying underworld thunder. If he didn't shatter it, he would be hit. In an instant, Chu Mu performed the lesser 8 forms of the void shattering 3 times. At the last time, the silver-white sword light seemed to converge into a silver-white dragon. It broke through the sky, and wherever it passed, a pitch-black ravine was plowed in the space. The two dragons collided, and a shocking explosion covered the sky. A terrifying pressure slammed into Chu Mu's body, and an intense storm blew, causing his body to be flung away. The power of the underworld thunder attacked him, and Chu Mu only felt numb all over. For a moment, he couldn't muster up any strength. The 10th divine sun arrived on thunder, and there was underworld thunder flashing under his feet. He looked down at Chu Mu from above. He opened his left hand, and the underworld thunder condensed into a giant hand, grabbing toward Chu Mu. Chu Mu tried his best, but he couldn't dispel the underworld thunder on his body. He was numb and weak. Just as the underworld thunder hand approached and was about to grab Chu Mu, the sword light seemed to come from the sky and shattered the underworld thunder hand. Immediately, 3 figures arrived on the sword light. The human divine son. The 10th divine son of the underworld god clan stared at the people who had suddenly appeared. He was about to grab Chu Mu, but was stopped by someone. No one was happy. I was wondering who it was. It's the 10th divine son of the underworld god clan. He's a human. You can't touch him. One of the newcomers was one of the human divine sons. Human, unless you never enter the beast-refining wilderness again, you'll die, the 10th divine son of the underworld god clan said, looking at Chu Mu. He flew away on thunder. He wasn't afraid of one-on-one fighting, but he was no match for the 3 human divine sons. He might even be killed. Although they wanted to kill him, the 3 human divine sons knew it wouldn't be that easy. At their level, winning or losing was possible, but it was difficult to determine life and death. This battle would definitely attract other divine sons. Chu Mu was saved. Thank you, divine sons. Chu Mu dispelled the power of the underworld thunder, got up and bowed to the 3 divine sons. One of them was the 9th divine son. You're not bad to be able to survive the pursuit of the 10th divine son of the underworld god clan, the 9th divine son said. I heard that you've obtained an inheritance related to space power in the underground palace. Show it to me. Another divine son stared at Chu Mu. There was a flash of silver in his eyes, which made Chu Mu feel a fluctuation of space power. Chu Mu will repay you for saving my life today, but I can't control the inheritance, Chu Mu said. The divine son who controlled space power frowned and was a bit unhappy. Third brother, the more advanced the inheritance is, the harder it is to control, the 9th divine son said. He seemed to be speaking for Chu Mu. Then he looked at Chu Mu. You're very talented. I hope you can cultivate well and kill more alien races. Chapter 1163. Leaving the beast refinement wasteland and returning to the 2nd floor of the sword tower, Chu Mu hastily sat down cross-legged and circulated the astral tribulation cultivation method to refine the traces of nether lightning hidden in his body. Although the nether lightning hidden in his body did not affect him at the moment, it could erupt at a critical moment. For example, in a fierce battle, if it suddenly erupted and numbed Chu Mu, it could change the outcome of the battle. This was a hidden danger that must be eliminated. The astral tribulation cultivation method used the power of the stars to cultivate. It could be said that in this world, most of the forces between heaven and earth could not escape the power of the stars. The nether lightning of the nether god clan's nether lightning was naturally within the power of the stars. It took him 4 hours to refine the traces of nether lightning. Chu Mu felt that his physique seemed to have improved. My strength is still too low. After eliminating the hidden danger, Chu Mu said inwardly. Facing other foreign race geniuses, he could fight and even kill them. For example, the Golden Feather race's 3rd prince, Jin Yui. However, facing the god princes of other races, his strength was not enough, far from enough. Today, in the battle with the Nether God clan's 10th god prince, except for not using the burning blood transformation and exposing his top divine grade sword intent and power of laws, Chu Mu could be said to have gone all out. Not only was he unable to do anything to the Nether God clan's 10th god prince, he had to escape under the latter's casual attacks. In the end, if the 3 god princes of the human race hadn't appeared, he would have been dead by now. Chu Mu knew that the difference between him and the god princes was not because of talent, but because of the cultivation environment. He wanted to cultivate, and almost all the cultivation resources he needed were obtained through his own efforts, going through life and death situations. However, the god prince's cultivation resources were provided by the deity's Templar, and they were better than what Chu Mu had obtained. Moreover, Chu Mu cultivated by himself, while the god princes had the deity's Templar's experts to guide them from time to time. With the same talent, different cultivation environments would ultimately create different differences in strength. My physique cultivation has reached the early 9-star realm, close to the peak. My sword art has the lesser 8 void-shattering forms, a top earth-grade sword art with great power. My shortcoming now is the cultivation of sword origin. The peak of the late 5th heaven creation realm was not yet truly at the peak. This level was still very low. If my sword origins cultivation can reach the 7th heaven creation realm, I should be able to fight against the God Clan's 10th God Prince. Chu Mu thought to himself. It was just a guess. Once Jian Yuan's cultivation reached the 7th level of creation realm, his strength would skyrocket. A casual strike would be able to instantly kill a 9-star peak martial king. However, divine sons were all extraordinary, and Chu Mu had no idea what kind of trump cards they possessed. Strength, only 2's the goddesses was to fight those princesses. Goddess in S, a dragon god dragon fruit was, earth dragon fruit S, fruit god. Chu Mu began to organize his spoils. With a thought, one spatial ring after another flew out of his spatial ring. There were over 80 of them, indicating that there were over 80 foreign races that had died under his sword. Over 80 foreign races had made Chu Mu's name famous. It was a pity that he didn't get Jin Yui's interspatial ring. Otherwise, with his identity as the 3rd prince of the Golden Feather Clan, he might have some rare treasures. These 80 interspatial rings were all ownerless. Chu Mu quickly checked them. After all, they were interspatial rings of foreign races. Some of the items were useless to humans, and Chu Mu couldn't trade them with foreign races. They could be discarded. Only a few items were useful to humans, but they were more ordinary and not very useful. This is, when he checked the 70th interspatial ring, a flower appeared in Chu Mu's hand. It was a very simple flower. It was dark yellow and looked like a wild chrysanthemum. It had 5 petals and each petal was the size of an egg. It emitted a strange fragrance. The aura emitted by this strange flower contained a trace of a familiar scent to Chu Mu. This is the smell of desolation. Chu Mu was overjoyed. The smell of desolation, which meant that this strange flower contained the power of desolation. The divine desolation sword energy was the power of desolation. When cultivating, the divine desolation sword art could convert Yuan Qi into desolation power. However, a small portion of the conversion would be wasted during the conversion process. If there was something that contained the power of desolation, it wouldn't be wasted when absorbing it. This flower contained the power of desolation. However, Chu Mu wasn't sure how much power of desolation it contained. After pondering for a while, Chu Mu plucked a petal and threw it into his mouth. He chewed and swallowed it. When it entered his stomach, a surge of power of desolation was released and swept through his body. Chu Mu quickly sat cross-legged and cleared his mind. He circulated the divine desolation sword art and absorbed the power of desolation in his body, quickly converting it into the divine desolation sword energy. The golden divine desolation sword energy flowed through his meridians at a uniform speed. After an hour, Chu Mu absorbed all the power of desolation in that petal. Peak of the 5th heaven of creation realm. Chu Mu was surprised and delighted. One petal allowed his sword energy cultivation to break through the late 5th heaven and reach the peak of the 5th heaven. There were still 4 petals left, enough for him to break through to the 6th heaven. Once his sword energy reached the 6th heaven, Chu Mu's strength would increase significantly. However, it wasn't enough. The combination of a 6th heaven cultivation and an early 9-star physique wasn't enough to fight against a god's son. Stronger, he needed to be stronger. He stuffed the remaining petals and petals into his mouth, chewed and swallowed. A powerful surge of power of desolation immediately exploded. Chu Mu quickly circulated the divine desolation sword art and continuously absorbed the pure power of desolation. He quickly converted it into sword energy, causing the amount of divine desolation sword energy to continuously increase and become purer. Suddenly, a thunderous sound exploded from within his body. Chu Mu's body trembled. Sword energy surged and poured into his dantian, causing the divine desolation sword energy lake in his dantian to expand once again. Cultivation breakthrough, 6th heaven of creation realm. Early heaven of creation realm, and it was still increasing. It only stopped when it reached the peak of the early heaven of creation realm and was close to breaking through to the middle heaven of creation realm. Cultivation, 6th heaven of creation realm, peak of the early heaven of creation realm. The current power of the divine desolation sword energy was comparable to that of an early 8th heaven of creation realm sword energy, both in terms of quantity and quality. Although it was gratifying that his cultivation had increased and his strength had become stronger, Chu Mu still couldn't feel happy when he thought of the god sun's strength. Unfortunately, Chu Mu didn't find a second rare treasure that could increase his cultivation. Thinking about it, it was good enough to get one. Any more and he would be greedy. After successfully breaking through to the 6th heaven, Chu Mu stood up and practiced the lesser 8 forms of void shattering. Once he drew his sword and practiced the sword art, Chu Mu immediately felt different. It was as if his understanding of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering had reached a new level. His mastery had also reached a new level, surpassing proficiency and approaching the essence. It's only been a day. Surprised, Chu Mu stopped and thought carefully. After a while, a look of realization appeared on his face. It should be because he had used all his strength to perform the lesser 8 forms of void shattering continuously when he was fighting against the powerful underworld art cast by the 10th god's son. Under the immense pressure, he had achieved a breakthrough. The improvement of his sword art was very gratifying. Chu Mu swung his sword again and practiced. If he could grasp the essence of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering, his strength would increase again. For a few days, Chu Mu stayed in the sword tower to practice, consolidate his cultivation, practice his sword art, and improve his strength. Then, he left the sword tower again and entered the beast refinement wasteland to kill beasts and foreign geniuses. But this time, he didn't go deep into the wasteland. Even so, the golden feather race and the others kept chasing after him. Even a god's son of the golden feather race was chasing after Chu Mu. Chu Mu escaped with great difficulty and returned to the sword tower in the human territory of Iron Blood City. 7 days later, Chu Mu set off again, but this time, as soon as he entered the beast refinement wasteland, he was ambushed. In the end, he killed the ambusher and escaped back to the sword tower with serious injuries. Chu Mu also understood that these foreign races had already seen him as a thorn in their flesh. They wouldn't give up until they got rid of him. As long as he entered the beast refinement wasteland, no, as long as he left the human territory, he would be surrounded and killed by them. On the 2nd floor of the sword tower, Chu Mu's injuries had recovered again. Strength. He was very unwilling. Because he wasn't strong enough, he couldn't enter the beast refinement wasteland to hunt to his heart's content. Because once he entered, he would be surrounded and killed by the foreign geniuses. When facing him, the foreign geniuses seemed to have reached a consensus. The human race was declining. Even if the human geniuses supported Chu Mu, they couldn't fight against the geniuses of the 100 races. In the future, I can only stay in the sword tower and cultivate. Chu Mu thought to himself. He was full of killing intent towards the foreign races. He knew that the foreign races had 2 goals, to kill him and to take a step back. If they couldn't kill him, they could at least restrict his growth. If he didn't enter the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking, he wouldn't be able to enter the underground palace of inheritance the next time the land of inheritance opened and obtain the inheritance with 100% certainty. In fact, Chu Mu's name had already fallen from the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking. Because he didn't hunt training beasts, his merit points didn't increase. On the other hand, the other geniuses kept hunting training beasts, and their merit points kept increasing. Taking advantage of this time, I'd better comprehend the essence of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering. Chu Mu put down the unwillingness in his heart, and also temporarily put down the strong killing intent towards the foreign geniuses who were chasing after him. He calmed his mind and started to comprehend the lesser 8 forms of void shattering. Sword arts needed to be practiced and comprehended to be able to comprehend the essence. The lesser 8 forms of void shattering was already infinitely close to the essence because of continuous battles and continuous use. It was only a hair's breadth away. Chu Mu planned to try his best to grasp the essence of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering before the land of inheritance opened. Chu Mu didn't appear again, but the foreign race geniuses didn't let down their guard. Once they discovered Chu Mu's whereabouts, they would immediately take action. A human sword of Gojoseon who had the low-grade high god realm imperishable sword intent, grasped the power of space, and even sword force, if allowed to grow, his threat might not be weaker than the human race's god-children. Chapter 1164. In the beast refinement wasteland, there were battles and deaths every day. Killing the beast refinement could also be killed by the beast refinement. Among the foreign race geniuses, they would also kill each other. Chu Mu didn't leave the sword tower, but stayed on the 2nd floor and cultivated wholeheartedly. Divine Wilderness Sword Essence, Astral Calamity, Lesser 8 Styles of Void Shattering, and so on. In his spiritual world, the silver-white void shattering secret manual resonated with the power of space rule. In the subtle vibrations, the power of space rule kept increasing. The cultivation of the lesser 8 styles of void shattering could also play an obvious supporting role in the cultivation of the power of space rule. Now, the mastery level of the power of space rule had reached the peak of the basic level. Presumably, after mastering the essence of the lesser 8 styles of void shattering, the mastery level of the power of space rule was likely to break through and reach the microscopic level. Day by day time passed. The trial realm opened and entered Iron Blood City. The Iron Blood 100 battles ranking opened. 1 month later, the Land of Inheritance would open for the first time. After that, there would be 3 months to open the Beast Refinement Wasteland and hunt the Beast Refinement for merit points. Finally, the number of merit points would determine the ranking on the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking. Then, the Land of Inheritance would open for the 2nd time. The Land of Inheritance would open for a total of 3 times. After the 3rd opening, it also meant that the trial realm would close. Now, in another 10 days, the Land of Inheritance would open for the 2nd time. It was basically certain that Chu Mu wouldn't be able to enter the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking. In this way, he wouldn't be able to enter the underground Palace of Inheritance and obtain the inheritance for sure. Hopefully, he would be lucky enough to find the inheritance in the Land of Inheritance. The most important thing now was to improve his strength. As long as he mastered the essence of the lesser 8 styles of void shattering, he would have the hope to enter the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking again in the 3rd stage, although the hope was slim. Being besieged by the foreign race geniuses made it impossible for him to enter the Beast Refinement Wasteland and enter the Iron Blood 100 battles ranking. Chu Mu felt very aggrieved. He was brewing, ready to explode. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. All the aggrieved feelings and pressure turned into motivation, promoting Chu Mu's improvement. On the 2nd floor of the sword tower, the 5-phase sword was unsheathed and turned into silver-white sword light, sweeping across the void. 1 move, 1 style, 1 sword. The lesser 8 styles of shattering void 8 swords were all performed. There were still 3 days before the Land of Heritage opened. At this time, Chu Mu was completely immersed in the cultivation of the lesser 8 styles of shattering void. From the 1st style to the 8th style, he performed them over and over again, and gradually, he entered into a strange state. This state wasn't something that could be obtained just because one wanted to. Instead, Chu Mu had been cultivating non-stop for a long time, summing up the experience of many life and death battles. Bit by bit, it had led to a qualitative change. This wasn't a fluke, nor was it luck. It was inevitable. Again and again. On the 33rd time, Chu Mu suddenly felt as if something had exploded in his mind. His thoughts surged, and all sorts of comprehensions appeared one after another like a heavenly steed soaring through the skies, a white steed flashing through a crack. The sword paused for a moment in midair. Suddenly, a silvery white light surged out. It was purely the power of the spatial laws. It didn't contain any other power. It was a simple stab. This sword seemed to have transcended space. This sword seemed to have surpassed the lesser 8 styles of shattering void. This sword strike seemed to be the combination of the lesser 8 styles of shattering void. This sword was the embodiment of Chu Mu's current comprehension. This sword strike with this sword stab, Chu Mu felt that in his spiritual world, the shattering void secret tome suddenly bloomed with a strong silvery white light. It spread out like a scorching sun, illuminating the entire spiritual world. The power of the spatial laws suddenly trembled, vibrating at a high frequency. Peak foundation, breakthrough, minute subtlety. As Chu Mu expected, after grasping the essence of the lesser 8 styles of shattering void, the power of the spatial laws broke through as he wished, reaching minute subtlety. Of course, Chu Mu also knew that this was because of the shattering void secret tome. Without the shattering void secret tome, it would be very difficult to break through. The power of the spatial laws at the minute subtlety made Chu Mu feel that it was easier to control. Combined with the lesser 8 styles of shattering void, the power of the sword technique had obviously increased, and it was more flexible. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Chu Mu only felt that his consciousness was being pulled by a force, and he couldn't resist it. He entered the spiritual world to face the shattering void secret tome. The shattering void secret tome automatically flipped open. The cover, preface, first page, second page, and only stopped when it reached the 3rd page. In the silvery white light, one by one, characters flew up from the 3rd page and imprinted into Chu Mu's consciousness. After a moment, the characters disappeared, and the shattering void secret tome closed again. Chu Mu's consciousness was immersed in the spiritual world, immersed in comprehending the contents of the 3rd page of the shattering void secret tome. His body stood quietly, as if he had become a statue, frozen and motionless. After a full day, Chu Mu's sluggish eyes turned. He maintained the posture of thrusting out the sword before withdrawing it. The corners of his mouth widened, and an excited smile appeared on his face. The inheritance on the 3rd page of the shattering void secret tome made him feel very happy. That inheritance was very mysterious and profound, but it wasn't a sword technique, but something that Chu Mu dreamed of, an absolute art. Absolute arts were divided into 3 levels: ordinary absolute arts, advanced absolute arts, and supreme absolute arts. The difference between each level was very obvious. In theory, a unique skill was a powerful martial skill that was above a heaven-class martial skill. The power of a unique skill was also very strong. Even if it was an ordinary unique skill, its power would not be inferior to a heaven-class top-rank sword technique. Absolute arts were at a high level and were very powerful. It was also very difficult to cultivate absolute art. It didn't mean that you could cultivate an absolute art just because you obtained it. There were conditions and restrictions. In addition to having amazing comprehension, one also needed to have enough talent. Furthermore, there were also some conditions. Comprehension and talent were the same, but the conditions were based on the absolute arts requirements. Different absolute arts had different cultivation conditions. The cultivation of the 7th firmament of creation was the lowest threshold to cultivate an absolute art. Note that it was only the cultivation threshold. The absolute art that Chu Mu inherited from the shattering void secret tome was called Void Sword Chi. Void Rush Sword Chi was an ordinary absolute art. However, as an ordinary absolute art of the space attribute, its might was much stronger than most ordinary absolute arts. His mastery of spatial rule power had broken through to the minute subtlety, which was worthy of celebration. After all, the cultivation of spatial rule power was the most difficult among the various powers that he had mastered. If it wasn't for the shattering void secret tome, he didn't know when he would have broken through to the minute subtlety. Perhaps it wouldn't have been possible even after a few hundred years. The spatial rule power at the minute subtlety was the most powerful among Chu Mu's various rules. The minor void shattering 8 styles sword technique was the most powerful of all his sword technique. Moreover, he had grasped the essence of it, making it even more powerful. Now, he had also obtained a spatial type absolute art. Once he mastered it, Chu Mu's strength would increase by more than 10 times. Void Sword Chi Foreign Races. Chu Mu's eyes flickered with a cold light. Once he mastered the Void Sword Chi, Chu Mu would take it out on the foreign races. There were still 2 days before the Land of Inheritance would open again. At that time, Chu Mu would also enter to search for opportunities. In these 2 days, he would first try his best to cultivate the absolute art, Void Sword Chi. Using 2 days to cultivate an absolute art was just wishful thinking. Chu Mu didn't ask for too much and would try his best. After all, cultivating an absolute art was a long-term thing. Void Sword Chi wasn't a sword technique. It could be cultivated without a sword. Sitting down cross-legged, Chu Mu first comprehended it once, then began to cultivate. Aside from comprehension ability and natural talent, there were also other conditions for cultivating piercing Void Sword Chi. The first condition was that one had to grasp the power of space and reach the level of detail. The second condition was that one had to cultivate the lesser 8 styles of shattering void and comprehend its essence. Neither of the 2 conditions could be omitted. Actually, grasping the essence of the minor void shattering 8 styles didn't mean that one's spatial rule power would reach the minute subtlety level, nor did it mean that one would grasp the essence of the minor void shattering 8 styles when one's spatial rule power reached the minute subtlety level. The 2 complemented each other, but it wasn't absolute. In other words, even if Chu Mu spread the absolute art of Void Sword Chi, others wouldn't be able to cultivate it. The cultivation of Void Sword Chi was to use the spatial rule power to communicate with the spatial rule power in heaven and earth, absorb and gather it into one's body, fusing it with one's own sword origin and sword intent. After thousands of tempering, one could cultivate an original Void Sword Chi. This was a difficult process. No matter how difficult it was, Chu Mu would cultivate it. This was a good way to increase one's strength. Using his own spatial rule power at the minute subtlety level as the root, he continuously absorbed the spatial rule power in heaven and earth and peeled it out bit by bit. In the air around Chu Mu, there were tiny bits of silver starlight that were almost undetectable. As they spun, they approached Chu Mu and entered Chu Mu's body. The silver starlight was the spatial rule power in heaven and earth. Among the powers in heaven and earth, spatial rule power was the strongest and most concentrated. Moreover, it was everywhere. At the same time, spatial rule power was also the most stable and the hardest to absorb. Unless one was in a place where space was chaotic, spatial cracks or even spatial storms could appear at any time in such a place. It was very dangerous. If one was careless, one would be affected and die without a complete corpse. At this moment, Chu Mu was also having a hard time absorbing the spatial rule power. He had a feeling that his body was not as strong as his will. If it wasn't for his mastery of spatial rule power reaching the minute subtlety level, he wouldn't be able to absorb the spatial rule power. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Chu Mu stopped cultivating. After 2 days of continuous cultivation, he still hadn't succeeded in cultivating Void Sword Chi. He had only absorbed a little bit of spatial rule power into his body and fused it with his sword intent and sword origin. He had only reached the initial stage and had just touched the surface. His progress was slow. Chu Mu was helpless. This was the absolute art. It was powerful, but it wasn't easy to cultivate. The beast refinement wasteland closed and disappeared. The geniuses of the 100 races also returned to Iron Blood City. In the area of the various races, the ancient bronze gate of the land of inheritance appeared once again. The geniuses of the 100 races all surrounded the bronze gate, waiting for it to open. They had fought hard for 3 months, lingering between life and death countless times. In the end, they had survived. Wasn't it all for this moment? Chapter 1165. The ancient bronze gate stood majestically in the 100 tribes area of Iron Blood City. Suddenly, there seemed to be an ancient bell ringing, resounding through the ages and lingering in the air. Everyone opened their eyes wide, full of expectation. The ancient gate trembled and opened leisurely. An ancient and vicissitude aura spread out. "Let's go!" someone shouted excitedly. Suddenly, one by one, Sword of Gojosian rushed into the ancient bronze gate and entered the land of inheritance. Chu Mu naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Although he wasn't on the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking this time, and was unable to enter the Inheritance Underground Palace and obtain the inheritance with a 100% chance in the Inheritance Secret Realm, there was still a chance to obtain the inheritance. Within a month, Chu Mu had to try his best to obtain an inheritance that was suitable for him. The land of inheritance was vast and boundless. The land of inheritance was scattered everywhere. Whether one could find it or not depended on luck. Even if one found it, it also depended on luck whether it was suitable. If the inheritance found was opposite to one's own cultivation, it would not be worth it to accept it. Maintaining a normal state of mind while also not losing his drive, Chu Mu entered the inheritance secret realm. This time, he didn't choose the same direction as last time. Instead, he chose a different direction and used his movement technique to quickly advance. Everyone knew that it was impossible to find any inheritance in the land of inheritance. Even if there was, it had been found last time. Therefore, they could only go deeper to find the land of inheritance. Basically, everyone had the same idea. Therefore, they all ran like crazy, trying to go deeper into the land of inheritance before others and find the land of inheritance earlier. As humans, there was competition. Everyone wanted to be stronger. It had nothing to do with righteousness. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Chu Mu still could not find the land of inheritance. This made him speechless. If he could be listed in the Iron Blood battle list, he would have found a suitable inheritance in the underground palace of inheritance and accepted it. Shaking his head, he calmed his mind and continued to search. The land of inheritance was vast and boundless. It seemed that time and space were frozen. It was very strange. The light was a little dim. Chu Mu looked into the distance. Suddenly, his expression changed. He seemed to have seen something. His eyes slightly narrowed, and a bright light spun in his pupils as he carefully stared. Not long after, Chu Mu once again saw a tiny light. That light was like starlight. This should be a vision. If it was likely to be related to the land of inheritance. His heart suddenly jumped. With some expectation, Chu Mu used his body movement. His body seemed to turn into a sword light, flying forward. At the same time, there were many Sword of Gojosian who had discovered something. Their purpose seemed to be the same as Chu Mu. When Chu Mu reached his destination, half a day had already passed. Streaks of starlight flickered with multicolored radiance, enveloping this area. It was like a small starry sky, extremely beautiful and dazzling. Under the starlight there was a tomb, an ancient tomb. It looked very creepy. The huge contrast stunned Chu Mu at first, then he was overjoyed. The land of inheritance, Chu Mu said to himself. He took a step forward and flew forward. Suddenly, a sword light broke through the air and exploded. It turned into countless sword chi and blocked Chu Mu's path. If Chu Mu continued to move forward, he would be killed by the sword chi. Friend, this ancient star tomb is something that we discovered last time. However, due to a lack of time, we missed it. Friend, please do not interfere. Following that, A voice that seemed to be gentle yet contained a sharp intent sounded. It sounded like advice, but it was a warning. Chu Mu turned around and found there were 3 people. The leader was the Sword of Gojoseon at the peak of the 9-star level, and the other 2 were the Sword of Gojoseon at the late stage of the 9-star level. The aura they emitted was very sharp, which showed that the strength of the 3 Sword of Gojoseon was extraordinary. However, since they were not on the Iron Blood battle list, Chu Mu did not pay much attention to them. The one who stopped him was the Sword of Gojoseon at the peak of the 9-star level. When they saw Chu Mu's face, they were stunned at first. Then they smiled and said, "It's Brother Chu. I didn't expect you to still be alive." Their words were obviously teasing and a little sarcastic. Chu Mu entering the beast training wasteland and being hunted down was something many people knew about. Humans were all strange. Some people just couldn't bear to see others do well, while others, for some reason, would rejoice in other people's misfortune. These 3 people were obviously that kind of people. "Even if you die, I will live well," Chu Mu said lightly. He didn't talk much, but it didn't mean he wouldn't refute others. Moreover, because he was besieged by the alien tribes, he couldn't enter the beast training wasteland to hunt and earn merit points. He couldn't be listed on the Iron Blood battle list and couldn't enter the underground palace of inheritance to receive the inheritance. All these things made Chu Mu very angry. Yet, this fellow just had to rub salt into Chu Mu's wound. Wasn't this purely trying to anger Chu Mu? Chu Mu's words made the other party's expression suddenly change. One of the 9-star late-stage Sword of Gojoseon took a step forward and pointed his sword at Chu Mu. He said angrily, "A coward like you should hide in the sword tower. How dare you come out and make a fool of yourself?" When Chu Mu didn't enter the beast training wasteland, there was a rumor that Chu Mu was a coward. It was nothing more than a rumor deliberately released by the alien tribes. Their purpose was to irritate Chu Mu and make him lose his mind in anger. Then, he would enter the beast training wasteland and be killed by them. Chu Mu naturally knew about this. When Chu Mu first found out, he was indeed a little angry. However, he soon calmed down and understood that it was a trick of the alien tribes. If he broke into the beast training wasteland because of anger, he would fall into the alien tribe's trap. Chu Mu was also very clear about his current strength. He was definitely not a match for the Divine Sons. It was difficult for him to fight against one Divine Son. If there were 2 of them, he would definitely die. No matter how angry Chu Mu was, he could only hold it in for the time being. It was like he was enduring humiliation for the greater good. He was sharpening his sword. The more the other party ridiculed him, the sharper Chu Mu's sword would be. When he unsheathed it, it would only shock them. Chu Mu wasn't flustered and exasperated by the other party's words. He just looked a little cold. The light in his eyes was as cold as snow and as sharp as a sword. This made the 9-star late-stage Sword of Gojoseon involuntarily quiver. He just remembered that Chu Mu was ranked 990th on the Iron Blood battle ranking list with his strength. On second thought, he was not alone. He had 2 other companions. If the 3 of them joined forces, he wouldn't be afraid of the other party at all. "Chu Mu, your business has nothing to do with us. We don't want to get involved. However, we found this ancient star tomb last time. I think, with your identity, you won't compete with us," the 9-star peak Sword of Gojoseon said with a smile, using his words to push Chu Mu. "I'm just a 6-star Sword of Gojoseon. What identity can I have?" Chu Mu said indifferently, "Besides, the land of inheritance belongs to the Fated One. Maybe I'm the Fated One." There was a hint of ridicule in his slow tone. It took Chu Mu 10 days to find the land of inheritance. How could he give it to others, unless he was sure that the inheritance in the land of inheritance was useless to him? With such a delay, other Sword of Gojoseon came here. "What a beautiful star!" a female Sword of Gojoseon exclaimed. "There's an ancient tomb in the star. It must be the land of inheritance." It seems like it's an inheritance related to the power of the stars. It just so happens that one of the powers of heaven and earth that I've comprehended is the power of the stars. This inheritance belongs to none other than me. As more and more Sword of Gojosian arrived, the faces of the three Sword of Gojosian turned ugly. The more people there were, the greater the competition, and the lower the chances of obtaining the inheritance in the ancient star tomb. Chumu didn't say anything. His figure moved, and he flew towards the ancient star tomb. The moment Chumu moved, the other Sword of Gojosian also moved, striving to be the first to enter the ancient star tomb and receive the inheritance. Generally speaking, there could only be one inheritor. If someone else entered first, they wouldn't have a chance. Unless the other party failed to obtain the inheritance, only then would they have a chance. Chumu's speed was the fastest. Therefore, a Sword of Gojosian attacked him. The sword light pierced through the air. Its purpose was to stop Chumu, not to kill Chumu. Regardless of whether it was to stop or to kill, in short, they were all attacking Chumu. Chumu couldn't ignore it. The five-phase sword was unsheathed. With a slash, it turned into a silver-white sword light, piercing through the air, shattering the incoming sword light. The silver-white sword light's power didn't decrease as it shot towards the other Sword of Gojosian, blocking them. Do it! The 9-star peak stage Sword of Gojosian that had mocked Chumu shouted in a low voice. Together with the other two 9-star late-stage Sword of Gojosian, they attacked Chumu without hesitation. The sword light was ferocious. Not only did it want to stop Chumu, it even had the intention to injure Chumu. Chumu was furious. His figure dodged, and he counterattacked with his sword. The silver-white sword light pierced through the air, attacking the three Sword of Gojosian. The mastery of the essence of the lesser 8 styles of Shattering Void had an ethereal trajectory, as if it was untraceable, causing the expressions of the three 9-star Sword of Gojosian to change drastically. They hurriedly brandished their swords to display sword move. The sword light was like a torrential rain, airtight, blocking the silver-white sword light. The silver-white sword light's power was incomparably tyrannical. The three 9-star Sword of Gojosian's sword moves collapsed. However, the silver-white sword light displayed by the divine desolate sword essence was not Chumu's full strength. It did not have the tyrannical power of physique integrated into it. To be able to defeat the three 9-star Sword of Gojosian's Sword of Gojosian, it benefited from the powerful power of the laws of space and the essence of the lesser 8 styles of Shattering Void. The most important thing now was to enter the star tomb and obtain the inheritance. Everything else was secondary. Stop him! Angry roars rang out one after another. Streaks of sword light attacked like a torrential rain, attempting to stop Chumu. Because Chumu's explosive speed was the fastest, and he was at the forefront. Without any surprise, he would be the first to enter the star tomb. Close. Suddenly, with a ping sound, Chumu felt as if he had collided with cotton wool. He sank into it and was instantly bounced back, flying backwards. Immediately after, a series of ping-ping sounds rang out continuously. Chapter 1166. One by one, the bodies of the Sword of Gojosian crashed into a layer of invisible energy and bounced back. The faster the speed, the stronger the impact, and the greater the rebound. Chumu was a body-refining Sword of Gojosian. His physique was tyrannical. The huge impact caused him to fly back more than 100 meters before he landed. He had to take more than 10 steps back before he could stabilize himself. This made Chumu realize his enormous physique. Looking at the other Sword of Gojosian, the most they bounced back was about 50 meters, and they were swaying left and right. Chumu immediately understood what was going on. That layer of gorgeous starlight was actually a kind of protection. Some lands of inheritance could be directly entered. Some lands of inheritance would have some protection. One had to meet certain conditions or break through the protection to be able to enter. Immediately, a Sword King unleashed a ferocious attack against the starlight barrier. His powerful sword attacks transformed into sword light that was like lightning. When they landed on the barrier, they instantly exploded. The powerful barrier didn't budge at all. One by one, the sword of Gojosian attacked in an attempt to shatter the protection. Chumu also approached the protection. His actions did not attract any attention. When he attacked, the silver-white sword light instantly drew a perfect trajectory and attacked the starlight protection. The powerful sword light was shattered, but the starlight protection did not budge at all. Chumu frowned. An attack of this level could not damage the protection at all. No matter how many attacks he launched, it would be useless. With a thought, Chumu thought of his body refining cultivation method, astral calamity. He tried to use the astral calamity cultivation method. Suddenly, he felt as if there was a resonance between him and the starlight protection. Chumu's eyes lit up. He used the astral calamity cultivation method and walked towards the starlight protection. Then, he touched it. At first, the sword of Gojosian sneered when they saw Chumu touch the starlight protection again. In the next moment, their eyes widened and their faces were filled with disbelief. They did not know why, but this time, Chumu was not obstructed at all. It was as if the starlight protection did not exist. When Chumu's body touched the starlight protection, he felt as if he was in harmony with the starlight protection. It was as if the starlight protection was in harmony with his astral calamity cultivation method, allowing him to pass through without any obstruction. In fact, the starlight protection was a layer of the power of the stars. Anyone who had mastered the power of the stars could pass through it. Although Chumu did not master the power of the stars, he cultivated the astral calamity cultivation method. This was a cultivation method that absorbed the power of the stars. But the sword, and Chumu the sword. The sword, the sword. The sword, the sword, the sword seemed. At any one sword, the sword, and the sword of the sword. Damn it! One by one, the sword of Gojosian seemed to have realized what was going on. They stared at Chumu's back and cursed angrily. The ancient tomb was right in front of them. The ancient tomb was huge like a palace. Chumu pushed open the heavy door. It was pitch black inside. Then, it seemed as if there were stars twinkling in the sky. Rich astral energy surged out, as if it had been trapped in the palace for a long time. It swept through Chumu's body, making him feel very comfortable. Without pausing, he stepped into the palace under the starlight. The doors of the palace closed automatically. The people outside the starlight barrier could only watch as Chumu walked into the palace to receive the inheritance. While cursing, some of the sword of Gojosian turned around and left to look for other places where the inheritance could be. However, the first 3 9-star sword of Gojosian did not leave. They even called out to some of the other sword of Gojosian who were about to leave. Are you willing to let the inheritance in your hands be taken away by a coward who doesn't dare to face the foreign race? The 9-star pinnacle sword of Gojosian said. That's right. I think we should stay and wait for that coward to come out. Then, we can force him to hand over the inheritance. So he is the one who is being chased by the foreign race and doesn't dare to show himself. A coward like him doesn't deserve the inheritance. They were all indignant. They were prepared to stay and wait for Chumu to finish receiving the inheritance so that they could force him to hand over the inheritance. They all said nice things, but only they knew what they were thinking. Chumu seemed to have entered a new world. It was night and the sky was filled with stars. The starlight was bright and sparkling, like a human eye blinking. Under the starlight that filled the sky, Chumu felt as if he was in a boundless starry sky. Chumu felt as if the heavens and earth were extremely vast. Looking up at the starry sky, although it was very beautiful, Chumu didn't indulge in it. He was thinking about what the inheritance was. While he was thinking, the starlight in the sky flashed together. Then, they moved like shooting stars, but they didn't fall. Instead, they circled in the sky and finally condensed into a human figure. The human figure transformed into a starlight giant, standing between the heavens and the earth. It was as if it had existed since time immemorial. The starlight giant lowered its head to look at Chu Mu. Chu Mu only felt that his line of sight was captured, and he was unable to shift his gaze away. Next, the eyes of the giant shot out two beams of starlight, arcing through the sky. In an instant, they shot into Chu Mu's eyes. Chu Mu's body trembled, and he felt as though his body had disappeared. He seemed to have transformed into a beam of starlight, swimming freely in the boundless starry sky. Unrestrained, free, flying. All of a sudden, a figure appeared in front of him. It was a gigantic figure, standing between the heavens and earth. That figure's face couldn't be seen clearly, but the muscles on its upper body were as though they were cast from iron, presenting the most perfect shape. This gigantic figure, with a perfect body that seemed to be cast from iron, caused Chu Mu to tremble. Despite being so far away, he could feel the terrifying strength contained within that body. It was as though a casual vibration of its muscles could shatter a constellation. It moved, that giant moved. Both of its arms were raised, and its palms could pluck the stars and moon. With a grab, a gigantic constellation shattered. Its left hand formed a sword finger, and it slowly pointed forward. Resplendent starlight condensed at the tip of its finger, and as it pointed forward, its strength penetrated the void, and a gigantic constellation in the distance was struck. The constellation trembled violently and shattered into pieces. This terrifying might cause Chu Mu to draw in a breath of cold air, and his eyes widened in shock. Who was this person? How could he be so terrifying? Chu Mu could tell that this gigantic figure merely relied on the strength of his physique. One hand could shatter a constellation, and one finger could shatter a constellation. It was truly terrifying. The giant waved its arms, and a terrifying starry sky storm immediately swept out. Numerous stars shattered, turning into dust. The terrifying wind swept towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu was shocked. He thought that he would be turned into dust like those stars, but he discovered that the wind only made him feel violent. It didn't harm him in the slightest. Chu Mu was like a bystander, watching this giant wreak havoc in the starry sky. The shattered stars turned into strands of starlight and flew towards the giant, entering the giant's body. Chu Mu could see the scene of the strands of starlight moving under the giant's skin after entering the giant's powerful body. As Chu Mu watched on, the giant approached and crashed into the starlight that Chu Mu had transformed into. Chu Mu only felt as if he had become this giant, quietly standing in the void without moving, constantly absorbing the power of the stars in the boundless starry sky. The power surged into his body and was rapidly refined, constantly strengthening his body. This is... Chu Mu was startled. He realized that this giant was using a cultivation technique that he was extremely familiar with. It was the first level of the Star Tribulation cultivation technique. Very quickly, the first level was completed. The absorbed starlight began to circulate in a different path. This path was more complicated than the first level, but it was also more comprehensive. Could this be the second level of the Star Tribulation cultivation technique? Chu Mu couldn't help being delighted. After the second level of the cultivation technique was completed, the third level, the fourth level, the path changed again and again. It changed a total of 11 times before it stopped. The 11th level of the cultivation technique should be the 11th level of the Star Tribulation cultivation technique. It was also the level of this giant, an incomparably powerful level. Chu Mu didn't know what level the giant's physique had reached, because it exceeded his limit by too much. It was countless times, and it was impossible to calculate. Chu Mu never thought that his luck would be so good that he could obtain the inheritance of the Star Tribulation cultivation technique. Moreover, it wasn't just the second or third level inheritance. Previously, he had only obtained the first level of the Star Tribulation cultivation technique. He also knew that there was no second level in the Heavenly Sword Hall. As he cultivated, his physique reached the early 9-star level. Chu Mu also began to feel distressed because he would have to cultivate to the peak of the 9-star level and complete the first level. At that time, if he wanted to continue to improve, he would either have to continue the cultivation technique after the star tribulation, or change to another cultivation technique that wouldn't be inferior to the star tribulation. Regardless of which one it was very difficult. Chu Mu was even prepared to wait for his physique to reach the 9-star pinnacle before being unable to improve it for a long time. Who would have thought that he would actually enter the ancient star tomb and obtain the inheritance of the astral calamity art? This was truly a huge surprise, a huge surprise. Chu Mu didn't know what level he could reach with the 11th level of the cultivation technique, but he was sure that it would be enough for him to cultivate for a long time. Junior of my tribe, since you have inherited my technique, you should do your best for the prosperity of our tribe. The name of this technique is Astral Tribulation. I have only created the 11th level. The rest of the technique will be up to you. Remember, when the stars move, the astral tribulation will be formed. When the stars turn, the astral tribulation will be formed. When the astral tribulation is formed, the astral tribulation will be formed. When the astral tribulation is formed, the astral tribulation will be formed. The ancient voice slowly faded away. Chu Mu didn't even know the name of this senior who had left behind the astral tribulation technique. Chu Mu's consciousness left the giant's body and returned to his own. In an instant, he could sense that his body was different from before. He was now at the peak of 9 stars. Chapter 1167. Powerful energy flowed through his muscles. When he clenched his fist, it was as if space was shattering in his palm. His fingers were like swords as he pointed at the void. The energy gathered at the tip of his finger. As he pointed, the air exploded again, leaving behind a mark. Peak 9 star. The tyrannical power made Chu Mu genuinely happy. The increase in strength from early 9 star to peak 9 star was very obvious. Chu Mu's close combat strength was even more powerful. This was an extremely joyous matter. Not only had he obtained the inheritance of the astral tribulation cultivation technique, but he had also mastered the first stage of the astral tribulation cultivation technique. This had improved his physique to the peak of the 9 stars cultivation technique. His strength had increased, and his survivability had also increased. Chu Mu clearly remembered that as long as he mastered the first level of the astral calamity, he would have the ability to survive in the starry sky. This was because the first level of the astral calamity allowed him to absorb the harmful power of the stars and use it to improve his physique. After mastering the first level, the next level would be the second level, which would allow his physique to break through the king level and reach a higher level. However, he couldn't do this in the trial realm because the trial realm didn't allow power beyond the king level to appear. The starlight in the sky disappeared. At the same time, the brilliant starlight outside the star tomb faded and disappeared. The 10 or so sword of Gojoseon who had been guarding outside saw this and immediately moved. They appeared at the entrance of the star tomb and waited for Chu Mu to appear. The door of the ancient tomb opened and a figure appeared. Chu Mu, hand over the inheritance. The 9-star peak sword of Gojoseon pointed his sword at Chu Mu and said impolitely, "I got the inheritance." Chu Mu glanced at him and said calmly, without any fear, "Humph, if it was someone else who got the inheritance we would have accepted it. But you can't." "That's right. You don't dare to face the alien race. It's a waste for you to get the inheritance. Why don't you hand it over and strengthen the other sword of Gojoseon and kill a few more alien races?" A 9-star late-stage sword of Gojoseon roared. The 10 or so sword of Gojoseon stared at Chu Mu with an unfriendly look. They surrounded him, as if they would rob him if Chu Mu didn't agree. "If I don't hand it over, are you going to rob me?" Chu Mu smiled coldly and said, "I'll give you a chance. Defeat me and you can get the inheritance. Otherwise, die. As soon as the word die came out, monstrous murderous aura surged like waves and erupted like a volcano. It shook the earth and shook the earth, causing the 10 or so sword of Gojosian's expressions to change drastically. Some of them couldn't help but take a few steps back, their expressions changing. Chu-Mu, if you're really capable, you should go fight the alien race instead of fighting your own kind here. A sword of Gojosian roared in exasperation. The terrifying murderous aura let them know that Chu-Mu wasn't someone to be trifled with. Nice words. Then why don't you go fight the alien race? Instead, you're here looking for trouble with me. Chu-Mu sneered and said, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you. Since we're of the same kind, get out of the way or die under my sword. Choose one of the two. The expressions of the several sword of Gojosian changed back and forth. After weighing the pros and cons, they felt that they were no match for Chu-Mu. They angrily snorted, took a few steps back, and turned to leave. The 10 or so sword of Gojosian suddenly became less than 10. Their momentum was even weaker because Chu-Mu's murderous aura was just too strong. The other sword of Gojosian looked at each other. Chu-Mu sneered and strode forward. He didn't care who was in front of him and directly rushed forward. The sword of Gojosian blocking him was very stubborn. He didn't dodge and even gathered his sword energy on his shoulder, preparing to give Chu-Mu a fierce blow. With a bang, Chu-Mu's figure didn't move at all. He wasn't affected at all and continued to stride forward. The sword of Gojosian, who was prepared to collide with Chu-Mu, trembled and was sent flying. His body spun in the air and landed on the ground. He only felt that the bones in his shoulder were shattered. It was extremely painful, and there was a terrifying force constantly drilling into his shoulder, as if it was going to break. After a long while, the sword of Gojosian stood up and took out a pill to heal the injury on his shoulder. He fiercely stared at Chu-Mu's back as he walked away. This matter won't end here. The dozen or so sword of Gojosian who joined forces to force him to hand over the inheritance didn't really make a move. If they had made a move, Chu-Mu naturally wouldn't have let them off so easily. The trial realm was a competition between hundreds of races, and not a competition between people of the same race. Chu-Mu wasn't someone who couldn't see the big picture. He was a human, and especially after receiving the inheritance of the shattering void great emperor and that unknown ancestor who created the astral calamity, he felt a heavy sense of responsibility in his heart. People of the same race, unless they had a true enmity with him or were extremely vicious and heinous, he wouldn't kill them if he could. Chu-Mu wasn't a pedantic person. He couldn't forget the righteousness of the human race, but if they really provoked him and abused him, he wouldn't be merciful. The land of inheritance was very big. After receiving the inheritance of the astral calamity, the land of inheritance hadn't closed yet, so there was still time to continue searching for other inheritances. If he was lucky, he might be able to obtain a very good inheritance that would be very helpful to the improvement of his strength. A few days later, Chu-Mu was very happy and excited because he found another land of inheritance. Immediately, he became depressed because the inheritance in that land of inheritance wasn't suitable for him. After weighing the pros and cons, Chu-Mu decided not to accept the inheritance, but to leave it to another suitable person. He continued to search, but unfortunately, it seemed that his luck had run out, and he didn't find another land of inheritance. In fact, compared to the other sword of Gojosian, Chu-Mu's luck was already very good. Thinking about it, most of the sword of Gojosian didn't even find a land of inheritance, so what was there to talk about whether it was suitable or not? The 1-month deadline was up, and the land of inheritance was about to close. Everyone could only leave. After the second opening of the land of heritage, it meant that they were about to enter the third stage. However, most of the sword of Gojosian returned to the sword tower first. Those who obtained the inheritance naturally planned to cultivate for a while. Those who did not obtain the inheritance also planned to rest for a while and adjust their energy before entering the third stage. This was because the third stage was more dangerous than the previous two stages. Chu Mu's sword tower was still there, but there were more sword towers in the human clan's territory. They were acquired by the sword of Gojoseon, who was ranked on the Iron Blood battle list for the second time. After returning to the sword tower, Chu Mu first spent some time to study the Star Calamity technique. However, he was unable to understand the phrase, "Stars move, Star Calamity, Star Calamity, Star Calamity." Maybe it's because my level isn't high enough, Chu Mu thought to himself. He could only put this matter aside for the time being. He had already mastered the first stage of the Star Calamity, but he still carefully comprehended the first stage of the inheritance. He found that there was no difference between the first stage and the one he exchanged. He then studied the second stage. The second stage was more profound than the first stage, but with Chu Mu's foundation and comprehension, he could easily comprehend it. What surprised him was that the second stage of the Star Calamity cultivation method actually had a small technique, or rather, a small technique. This small technique was called the Star Robe. It was not an offensive technique, but a technique of using power. It absorbed the power of the stars and condensed it into a long robe on the body. It was called the Star Robe. In the beginning, the Star Robe could only cover the body, but as it continued to condense, the Star Robe would become tougher and tougher. It would be comparable to a treasure robe and could resist attacks. Chu Mu tried to use it. Unfortunately, the level of the Star Calamity of the first stage was not high enough. He could not condense it. He could only cultivate the second stage to cultivate the Star Robe. This could be considered as a small expectation for Chu Mu. Next, Chu Mu cultivated the Void Sword Chi. The third stage would take half a year from the beginning to the end. Chu Mu planned to use this time to cultivate the Void Sword Chi before participating in the third stage. Otherwise, if he did not have enough strength to participate in the third stage, he would not be a match for the God's children. Thinking about it, those God's children most likely also grasped an ultimate technique. Without an ultimate technique, it would be too disadvantageous to fight against them. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Chu Mu temporarily put aside other cultivation and used all his time to cultivate the Void Sword Chi. He wanted to cultivate the Void Sword Chi as soon as possible. There was no shortcut. No matter how good Chu Mu's comprehension was, he could only cultivate step by step. Today, a group of people suddenly rushed to the second level of the sword tower without Chu Mu's permission. "Chu Mu, come out!" A rude shout rang out, disturbing Chu Mu's cultivation. Chu Mu walked out of the cultivation room with a displeased expression. Immediately, he saw dozens of Sword of Gojoseon. Some of them were familiar faces. They were among the dozens of Sword of Gojoseon that forced him to hand over the inheritance of the Star Tomb in the secret land of inheritance. The moment Chu Mu saw them, he knew that they were looking for trouble. Moreover, it was very likely that they were related to the inheritance of the Star Tomb in the secret land of inheritance. Among the dozens of Sword of Gojoseon that came aggressively, some of them stared at Chu Mu with an unfriendly expression. "What can I do for you?" Chu Mu asked indifferently. "Chu Mu, you took advantage of your ability to snatch the Star Tomb inheritance that belongs to us. Today we ask Brother Lin to uphold justice for us," the peak level 9 star Sword of Gojoseon roared. "That's right. You're a coward who doesn't dare to face a foreign tribe, but you bully your own kind. Can you face your own conscience?" For a moment, Chu Mu seemed to have become the target of everyone's crusade. A cold smirk hung at the corner of Chu Mu's mouth as he looked at the so-called Brother Lin. "Brother Chu, I'm Lin Huang." The leader cupped his fists at Chu Mu and said in a seemingly polite manner, "We're all humans. We should work hard for the prosperity of our tribe. It's not commendable to harm the interests of your own kind for your own benefit." "Brother Lin, do you know the truth of the matter?" Chu Mu asked indifferently. "Of course. We've already told you the truth in full detail, Brother Lin, the peak level 9-star sword of Gojoseon interrupted. Brother Lin will uphold justice for us. Chu Mu smiled in disdain. Brother Lin, it's not a good thing to be used as a sword. I'll naturally judge the truth. Chu Mu called him by his name without any courtesy. This angered Lin Huang. His expression darkened, and his politeness disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1168. Lin Huang was ranked 880th on the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking the first time, which was more than 100 ranks higher than Chu Mu. However, he was not able to enter the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking the second time. Moreover, he did not find the place of inheritance in the land of inheritance. He knew Chu Mu and knew that Chu Mu also failed to enter the Iron Blood battle ranking list the second time but obtained the inheritance. This made him jealous, so he was instigated to find trouble with Chu Mu. From the perspective of national righteousness, he did dirty things. Chu Mu understood the thoughts of this group of people very well. He also knew that when it came to matters like this, everyone had their own opinions, especially when he was alone and the other party had many people and many mouths. He could say whatever he wanted. Cut the crap and hand over the inheritance, Lin Huang said coldly with a cold light in his eyes. If you want the inheritance, come and get it yourself, Chu Mu also said in an indifferent tone. His body was like a mountain, immovable and solid, which made people frightened and bewildered. However, Lin Huang thought that his ranking on the Iron Blood battle ranking list was higher than Chu Mu's and his strength was better than Chu Mu's. Therefore, he did not have the slightest fear, but showed a grim smile. The sword was slowly unsheathed and the melodious sound of the sword echoed in the second floor of the sword tower. The cold sword light was pointed directly at Chu Mu. Lin Huang was going to attack directly in the sword tower. Seeing Lin Huang unsheathing his sword, the others immediately retreated and showed a gloating look. Chu Mu's strength was not weak, but Lin Huang's strength was also very strong. They thought that Lin Huang was stronger than Chu Mu. They would like to see Chu Mu being beaten down and obediently handing over the inheritance. Even if the inheritance was taken by Lin Huang, they would still feel good. It was a way of harming others without benefiting oneself. Take my sword. With a low shout, Lin Huang unsheathed his sword. The sword was like thunder, earth-shattering. He did not intend to kill Chu Mu. He only wanted to defeat Chu Mu and teach Chu Mu an unforgettable lesson so that he could obtain the inheritance. Once the sword move was unleashed, it was like a violent wave of thunder. It was vast and overbearing, extremely swift and fierce. Yet, Chu Mu didn't dodge. He waited until the violent thunder-like sword light arrived before he unleashed his sword. Everyone faintly saw the sword light flash, and their hearts unconsciously jumped. Chu Mu had counterattacked. The silver-white sword light was untraceable, as if it had merged into the void, but contained a terrifying and extremely violent power. A strong sense of danger rose in Lin Huang's heart, but his expression did not change, remaining calm. In an instant, he changed his sword moves. The sword light danced, forming a screen of lightning in front of him, like a barrier, blocking Chu Mu's sword. The silvery white sword light arrived. That was the lesser 8 void shattering style sword move, one that had grasped the essence of the lesser 8 void shattering styles. With Chu Mu's peak 9-star physique and 6th layer divine desolate sword essence, as well as the initial stage divine rank imperishable sword intent and spatial law force, its power had reached the pinnacle. Only now did Lin Huang realize that Chu Mu's strength was actually this strong. However, there was no time for regrets. He had to do his best to defeat Chu Mu, otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. Exerting all his strength, Lin Huang attacked with his sword move after move. Each and every one of his moves was incomparably violent. The sword gauntlet was instantly filled with lightning, causing the spectating sword of Gojoseon to retreat to the edge of the sword gauntlet. The sword gauntlet itself was protected by a powerful seal that could completely block a Nirvana realm swordsman's attack. No matter how strong a mere sword of Gojoseon was, it would be difficult for him to reach the level of a Nirvana realm swordsman. Lin Huang's strength was indeed very strong. If Chu Mu had not comprehended the essence of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering and had not cultivated the first stage of star calamity, raising his physique to peak 9-star, without exposing his top god rank sword intent and rule force, Lin Huang would only be able to remain undefeated. But now Chu Mu had the upper hand. Every time he attacked, Lin Huang would retreat a step. After using the lesser 8 forms of void shattering, Lin Huang had already retreated to the edge of the sword gauntlet, with nowhere to run. Chu Mu raised his sword once again. This time, a silver-white sword light flickered, becoming extremely dense, as if the 8 forms of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering were gathered on this sword. A terrifying aura spread out, and traces of destruction swept out like a hurricane. Lin Huang's expression changed drastically. The aura emitted by that sword was like a warning bell ringing in his heart, causing him to panic. He hurriedly shouted, "Stop, stop!" However, Chu Mu acted as if he did not hear Lin Huang's words, and attacked with his sword. Lin Huang's provocation infuriated Chu Mu. Even if he did not kill Lin Huang, Chu Mu would not let him off easily. The other sword of Gojoseon widened their eyes in fear. "Kill! Damn it!" Seeing that Chu Mu actually ignored his shouts, Lin Huang was shocked and furious at the same time. All the strength in his body exploded, and poured into the sword in his hand. His strongest attack madly attacked. In that instant, Lin Huang seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that could destroy the world, with a posture of mutual destruction. Chu Mu was not afraid at all. His expression did not change, and he still attacked with his sword. This sword was the essence of the lesser 8 forms of void shattering after mastering the essence. The lesser 8 forms of void shattering combined with Dishang's sword. It could be considered the 9th form above the lesser 8 forms of void shattering, the strongest form. It was also the strongest sword that Chu Mu had mastered so far. Amidst the crackling sound, the silver-white sword light collided with the lightning that Lin Huang had transformed into. In that instant, the terrifying lightning was actually split open, and Lin Huang continued to attack. The lightning exploded, and attacked from both sides of Chu Mu. The silver-white sword light struck the sword in Lin Huang's hand. The terrifying force passed through the sword, and directly hit his body. The protective sword aura was shattered, and the treasured robe and inner armor on his body were also torn apart by the silver-white sword light. The immense force caused Lin Huang's body to fly backwards at an even faster speed. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and he crashed into the sword gauntlet's seal. He bounced back and landed on the ground. His whole body was like a toad, and he looked extremely pathetic. The other sword of Gojoseon were dumbfounded. They were scared silly. They thought that Lin Huang was strong enough to defeat Chu Mu, but they did not expect that in the end, it was Chu Mu who defeated Lin Huang. Looking at Lin Huang's appearance, it seemed that Lin Huang had suffered serious injuries. "Take him and get lost." Chu Mu's tone was extremely cold. He pointed at Lin Huang, who was lying on the ground like a toad, and his voice was filled with murderous intent. If they were in the outside world, these people would have already died. However, in this place, they could still fight against the mutated tribes. Immediately, someone helped Lin Huang up and hurried downstairs. "Wait!" Chu Mu suddenly spoke again, and called out to the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon, who was the instigator. "I can spare you from death, but you can't escape punishment. This will be your punishment for instigating trouble." As soon as Chu Mu finished speaking, the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon was shocked. He felt that something was wrong, and he unleashed all of his strength. He unsheathed his sword, and with a backhand swing, a sharp sword light pierced through the air towards Chu Mu. At the same time, the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon dashed forward. A mocking smile appeared on Chu Mu's face. As soon as the opponent moved, Chu Mu knew what he was going to do. He swung his sword, and a silver-white sword gleam pierced through the air, directly splitting the opponent's sword attack. He swung his sword twice, and two silver-white sword gleams pierced through the air. Amidst the slashing sound, accompanied by a blood-curdling scream, the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon's arms were severed from his shoulders. The cut was smooth and flat, as if it had evaporated directly. The excruciating pain caused the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon to fall headfirst onto the first floor of the sword tower. Amidst the shock, he was taken away. Meanwhile, Chu Mu waved his hand and destroyed the two arms that had fallen to the ground, turning them into powder. Naturally, the sword and the space ring in the hands became his spoils of war. If it had not been for the instigation of the pinnacle 9-star sword of Gojoseon, he would have been spared some trouble. He could leave the others alone, but he could not let the culprit off so easily. Defeating Lin Huang and severing the pinnacle 9-star arms, Chu Mu acted as if he had done something trivial. It was something insignificant, so he did not take it to heart. He returned to the cultivation room and continued cultivating his void sword chi. The third stage of the 100 Tribes competition had already begun. It began after the Land of Heritage opened and closed for the second time. However, a portion of the people who had obtained inheritances in the Land of Heritage went into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. Some of the people who had not obtained inheritances were also cultivating, intending to reach their peak condition before entering the third stage. The first stage was 1 month, the second stage was 3 months, and the third stage was half a year. After closing the cultivation room and not allowing anyone to disturb him, Chu Mu sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock. He focused his mind and calmed his mind, entering into a state of cultivation once again. The Void Sword Chi secret technique was activated, and the space rule power in his spiritual world trembled as it communicated with the space rule power that existed in the air outside. Immediately, specks of silver light appeared. Like fireflies, they gathered from all directions. As they floated, they followed a mysterious trajectory and flew toward Chu Mu's body. They gradually entered Chu Mu's body and were absorbed by Chu Mu. They flowed through his meridians and were refined and integrated with the divine wilderness sword chi that he was carrying. Sword intent was also integrated. Chu Mu used the undying sword intent, which was much more powerful than ordinary sword intent. Using the undying sword intent to refine the void sword chi was more effective and efficient. While Chu Mu was cultivating, the outside world was in an uproar. However, a lot of news spread that Chu Mu had snatched someone else's inheritance. Not only did he not admit it, he even injured the person who went to seek justice. However, some of the Sword of Gojoseon had different views on this matter. After all, they did not see it with their own eyes. Only the person involved knew the truth. Following that, someone released the news that Chu Mu was one of the people involved. At that time, the situation was that Chu Mu and the other Sword of Gojoseon were fighting for the inheritance. In the end, Chu Mu entered the place of inheritance first and obtained the inheritance. There was no such thing as snatching the inheritance. This fight was quickly suppressed. No one came to find trouble with Chu Mu again. It seemed that the matter was left unsettled. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. Chu Mu stayed in the cultivation room and cultivated continuously. After cultivating continuously for half a month, the amount of space rule power that he had absorbed had reached a certain level. After being refined by the undying sword intent and the divine wilderness sword chi, an almost transparent silver-white sword chi appeared in Chu Mu's dantian. It was like a dragon swimming freely in his dantian. Chapter 1169. There was only a strand of hair in the almost transparent silvery white color. It was very fine and faintly discernible, as if it would be blown away by a strong wind. This was the void-pierced sword chi. However, it was not the real void-pierced sword chi because it was not condensed enough. It had not reached the standard of the void-pierced sword chi, and was only equivalent to an outline. If it was the real void-pierced sword chi, it would not have the faintly discernible and transparent feeling as if it was about to collapse. Half a month, Chumu muttered to himself as he felt the pseudo-void-pierced sword chi swimming freely in the sword origin lake in his dantian. It contained a terrifying sharpness that made Chumu feel shocked. Even though it was just a pseudo-void-pierced sword chi, it was several times stronger than the 9th style of the lesser 8 styles of void shattering. If I can master the real void-pierced sword chi, then its power. Chumu felt shocked just thinking about it. The time limit for the 3rd stage is half a year. Now that half a month has passed, I will use another half a month to cultivate the void-pierced sword chi and strive to master it before participating in the 3rd stage. While Chumu was cultivating, the 1,000 names on the Iron Blood 100 Battles steel had already appeared. However, they were changing every day. The extent of the change was very big, even bigger than the second time. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Within Chumu's dantian, a faint silvery white sword chi that was as fine as a strand of hair swam freely in the sword origin lake like a flood dragon. Void-pierced sword chi, minor accomplishment. Void-pierced sword chi was divided into 3 stages: minor accomplishment, Deshang, and great accomplishment. Minor accomplishment void-pierced sword chi was the real void-pierced sword chi. When it was upgraded to Deshang, its power would be even stronger. Great accomplishment was the limit. Using a month of hard work, he could reach minor accomplishment. However, if he wanted to reach Deshang, he would need more time and it would be even more difficult to reach great accomplishment. A month had passed and the 3rd stage had already started for a month. There were only 5 months left until the end. Basically, almost all the geniuses of the 100 races had participated in the 3rd stage. Chumu was also going to participate in the 3rd stage. With minor accomplishment in void-pierced sword chi, Zhang Xian's strength had risen by a whole new level. If it were Deshang, even if he were to devote the remaining 5 months to his cultivation, it would still be impossible for him to achieve such a feat. Ironblood, I want to participate in the 3rd stage, Chumu said to the sky. The 3rd stage was different from the previous 2 stages. Human Sword of Gojoseon, Chumu. Are you sure you want to participate in the 100 Races Massacre? Ironblood's ancient voice rang out. I'm sure, Chumu answered in an affirmative tone. Human Sword of Gojoseon, Chumu. He participated in the 100 Races Massacre and obtained 3 life mark. Every time he dies, 1 life mark shatters. All 3 life marks shatter. The 4th time, death. Following Tai Shue's ancient voice, Chumu's body was enveloped by a wave of energy. Soon after, he seemed to shatter before instantly reforming. Chumu only felt his vision darken and brighten. He had already left the 2nd floor of the sword tower and appeared in a palace hall. Swords floated around the tall and spacious palace hall, forming a huge circle. It was like a huge sword formation. Besides Chumu, the other human sword of Gojoseon also appeared in the palace hall. Some information appeared in Chumu's mind. This place was the Massacre Secret Realm. It was a secret realm created with Ironblood City as its foundation. The controller was the spirit of Ironblood City, Ironblood City. All the geniuses who participated in the 3rd stage of the 100 Races Massacre would enter the secret realm and kill each other until the time limit was up. Every time he killed a person, he would obtain slaughter points. If the opponent had less than 1 slaughter points, then he would obtain 1 slaughter point. If the opponent had more than 1 slaughter point, then he would obtain half of the total number of slaughter points he had. To enter the final inheritance secret realm, one needed 100 slaughter points. Every person who entered the Massacre Secret Realm, regardless of race, would obtain 3 life marks. 1 life mark represented 1 life. Every time one died, 1 life mark would disappear until all 3 life marks had disappeared. In short, in the massacre's secret realm, everyone could die 3 times. Each death would be replaced by a life mark. After the 3rd death, 3 life marks would disappear. The 4th death would be one's own life. If one died, they would truly die. Chu Mu could feel that he had a total of 3 life marks. When he looked at the other sword of Gojoseon around him, he could also feel that they had 3 life marks. Some had 2, some had 1. When one was killed with a life mark, they would reappear in the palace hall. In the massacre secret realm, the 100 Races massacre secret realm had 100 palaces. Pieces of information quickly surged into Chu Mu's mind, allowing him to have a direct understanding of the massacre secret realm. Now, he had 2 choices. First, he could stay in the human palace until the time was up. When the massacre secret realm closed, he would be very safe. But then, he would not have the chance to enter the inheritance secret realm. Second, he could walk out of the human palace and enter the massacre secret realm. He could look for foreign races to kill and obtain slaughter points. In this way, he could obtain at least 100 slaughter points and obtain the qualification to enter the last inheritance secret realm. He could even be ranked on the Iron Blood battle list and obtain the qualification to enter the inheritance underground palace. However, there was danger. If he was not careful, he could lose his life. Without hesitation, Chu Mu chose the second option. His purpose of participating in the 3rd stage was to be ranked on the Iron Blood battle list. Holding the 5-phase sword in his left hand, Chu Mu strode out of the human palace and stepped into the massacre secret realm. Instantly, waves of murderous aura swept over and wrapped around Chu Mu's body, making him shudder. The massacre secret realm was full of slaughter chi. "You just came in?" asked a sword of Gojoseon beside him. Not all the sword of Gojoseon knew Chu Mu. Chu Mu nodded. "The massacre secret realm is very dangerous. Once you see foreign races from afar, it's best to avoid them first and observe their strength." The sword of Gojoseon said to Chu Mu. He only had 1 life mark left. He had died twice. "Thank you," Chu Mu said. No matter what, the other party had good intentions. "Be careful." With a brief sentence, the 9-star sword of Gojoseon with only 1 life mark left quickly. Chu Mu chose a direction and moved. His 6 senses were raised to the extreme. He could sense the surroundings very clearly. The slaughter chi here was very dense, but it could not affect Chu Mu at all. The human palace had its own area. Along the way, Chu Mu also encountered some human sword of Gojoseon. Some people would ask Chu Mu if he wanted to form a team to kill the foreign races together. Some people just glanced at Chu Mu and ignored him. Chu Mu rejected the suggestion of forming a team. He liked to travel alone. Even if he wanted to form a team, he had to have suitable teammates. A team with uneven strength would only be a burden. As he went deeper, the slaughter chi became denser. Perhaps it was because the geniuses of the 100 races were killing each other. Chu Mu found a target and was treated as a target at the same time. They were from the Demon Eye race. 2 of them were 9-star kings. As soon as they saw Chu Mu, they immediately surrounded him and used their innate ability. Their eyes shot out demonic light. Chu Mu's figure flashed and dodged one of the demonic light. He waved his sword and shattered the other demonic light. His body was like lightning as he rushed toward the 2 Demon Eye race people. The Demon Eye race member also quickly approached Chu Mu. He held a curved short blade in his hand. The blade was incomparably sharp and shockingly cold. The daggers slashed out and the blade broke through the air. The space was cut open like tofu. With 2 slashes, the silver-white sword light flashed and disappeared into the void. It swept past the 2 Demon Eye race people and killed them. With Chu Mu's current strength, there were very few people who could compete with him in close combat other than the deity-level geniuses. Ordinary geniuses would die in a single touch. After killing the 2 Demon Eye race people, their corpses disintegrated in the blink of an eye and disappeared. Chu Mu did not get any spoils of war. However, He could feel that he had gained 2 slaughter points. Thinking about it, the 2 Demon Eye race geniuses would be reborn in the Demon Eye race's main hall and break a life mark. The 2 Demon Eye race geniuses who had been killed by Chu-Mu hated Chu-Mu very much after being reborn in the Demon Eye race's main hall. However, they knew that Chu-Mu's strength was terrifying. With just 1 slash, he had killed them. Such strength was not something they could contend with. The central area of the Massacre Secret Realm was the place with the most geniuses of the 100 races. It was also the place where the geniuses of the 100 races killed the most. Chu-Mu had come to the central area of the Massacre Secret Realm. Here, he could encounter foreign race geniuses at any time, either alone or in group. Chu-Mu's perception was extremely strong, far surpassing that of a 9-star king. He could sense the other party's approach in advance and react accurately. His stealth ability had also become more and more practiced after killing, becoming more and more refined. It was even harder for others to discover him. As he continued to fight and kill, the number of foreign race geniuses he killed increased. The number of slaughter points he gained increased as well. He already had more than 200 points. The number of foreign race geniuses who had died under his sword had reached 30. 2 of them were extremely unlucky and only had 1 life mark left. After being killed by Chu-Mu, their life mark would shatter, and they would only be left with their own lives. If they were killed again, only death would await them. The 3rd stage had only been open for a little more than a month, and a small number of geniuses had already been killed. Their life marks shattered one after another, and they were left with only their own lives. They were faced with 2 choices. The first choice was to continue to stay in the Massacre Secret Realm and continue to fight and kill. However, it was very likely that they would be killed by others. At that time, they would truly be dead, without any hope of survival. The second choice was to leave the Massacre Secret Realm. Some of them had reached 10 slaughter points and had the qualifications to enter the final Inheritance Secret Realm. After some thought, they felt that it was very dangerous to stay in the Massacre Secret Realm. If they continued to stay, not only would they not be able to obtain more slaughter points, but they might even become the slaughter points of others. After some consideration, they decided to leave the Massacre Secret Realm. As for those with less than 10 slaughter points, they were conflicted. If they left, they could live, but they would not have the chance to enter the Inheritance Secret Realm. It could be said that they had not gained anything from the trial world. If they stayed, they might have the chance to obtain enough slaughter points to enter the Inheritance Secret Realm. But there was also the possibility of death. While they were facing a choice, Chu-Mu was also facing a choice. Chapter 1170. He was hiding behind a boulder. His aura was completely restrained, as if he had merged with the boulder next to him. In the distance there was a group of people. It was a group of other species. There were a total of 7 of them. Looking at their appearances, Chu-Mu knew that they were the 100 species Black Elite species because the black patterns on their faces were too conspicuous. The Black Spirit race was ranked outside of the top 20 in the 100 races. Their overall strength was inferior to the human race. Even so, each of these 7 Black Spirits had reached the peak of the 9-star king level. Their bodies were emitting a dense baleful aura. Especially the thinnest Black Spirit. His dark eyes were very deep, and they were emitting a heart-palpitating chill. He was the most powerful of the 7. Chu-Mu didn't care about the 6-peak 9-star king realm experts, but the aura of the thinnest Black Spirit race person caused Chu-Mu to be vigilant. He was probably a genius that could be ranked in the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking. Among the 7 Black Spirit race people, the most powerful one still had 3 life marks. He hadn't been killed yet. Of the other 6, 3 had 2 life marks left, and the other 3 had 1 life mark left. These 7 Black Spirit race people were rushing towards Chu-Mu. Suddenly, the most powerful Black Spirit race person stopped. His dark eyes flickered as he looked around, as if he could see through the boulder. "Don't hide, I have already found you." the Black Spirit Race person suddenly said with a confident tone. It seemed that he had really found something. The 6 Black Spirit Race people suddenly became very vigilant. They swept around but found nothing. Chumu didn't move. Maybe the other party just felt that something was wrong, but didn't really find him. Suddenly, the powerful Black Spirit Race person stretched out a finger. The black lines on his body seemed to be activated. The power was transmitted and condensed at the tip of his finger. It turned into a black light and shot towards the ground. The ground wasn't damaged at all. The black light at the tip of his finger shot into the depths of the ground. 3 shadows, from 3 different directions, silently rushed out of the ground like ghosts. They turned into a black brilliance and shot towards the Black Spirit Race people. There were 3 Earth Demon Race people hiding in the ground. Chumu was secretly surprised. He couldn't sense the existence of the 3 Earth Demon clansmen. However, the place where he was hiding was still several hundred meters away. In addition to the innate talent of the Earth Demon clan, they were extremely proficient in Earth escape. As long as he hid underground and did not move, it would be even harder to discover him. The reason why the geniuses of the Black Fairies were able to sense it was because they were close to the Earth Demon clansmen and the Earth Demon clansmen wanted to kill them. Chumu narrowed his eyes as the figures of the 3 Earth Demon clansmen appeared clearly. Each of them had 2 life marks. When the Earth Demon clansmen attacked, the Black Goblin genius reacted quickly. The black lines on his body seemed to come alive as they flickered with a faint light. He waved his hands and shot out a black light towards the Earth Demon clansmen. Stimulating the runes on their body and releasing energy was the fighting style of the Black Spirit. Black lights crisscrossed and weaved into a giant net, enveloping the 3 Earth Demon clansmen. The Earth Demon clan's genius was also very powerful. The black dagger in his hand was like the fangs of a demon as it smashed the black light. The Black Goblin genius and the Earth Demon clan's geniuses engaged in an intense battle. 7 Black Fairies, 3 Earth Demons, 10 slaughter points. The hidden Chumu was like a rock, not emitting the slightest bit of aura. 1 hit, 1 kill. A light flashed through Chumu's eyes. With his strength, he could definitely kill the 7 Black Goblins and the 3 Earth Demon clansmen one-on-one, but 10 I can only use the Void Pierce Sword Chi. Chumu thought. The Void Pierce Sword Chi was an absolute art, so it must be very powerful. However, Chumu didn't know how powerful it was because he hadn't used it yet. However, the Void Pierce Sword Chi gave Chumu a terrifying feeling. It was many times more powerful than his current strongest sword. He was waiting for an opportunity, the best opportunity to attack. He communicated with the Void Pierce Sword Chi in his Dantian and was ready to attack at any time. The 7 Black Goblins and the 3 Earth Demon clansmen cooperated in an intense battle. For a moment it was hard to determine the victor. However, they didn't know that there was someone hiding not far away, ready to catch them all in one fell swoop. Intense collisions and powerful energy explosions spread out in all directions. Smoke and dust billowed, and a layer of dust was scraped up from the ground. Chumu's eyes flashed. The opportunity had come. The rushing void sword aura in his Dantian trembled. In an instant it split into 2. One rushed out of the Dantian and followed the meridians. Like a bolt of lightning, it rapidly swam towards Chumu's finger. Chumu extended a finger. The tip of his finger flickered with a weak silver-white color. Instantly, countless silver-colored fragments of light appeared in the surroundings. With Chumu's finger as the center, they rapidly converged. In an instant, the silver-white color on his finger became clearer. The sudden spatial energy fluctuation didn't catch the attention of the Black Goblins and Earth Demon clansmen. Firstly, the battle was intense, and the energy fluctuation was intense. Secondly, they didn't control the power of space. Therefore, their perception of the spatial energy fluctuation wasn't that obvious. After 10 breaths of time, he gently pointed his finger forward. A wisp of silvery white sword light instantly shot out. It was silent and extremely fast. Void-pierced sword chi. It didn't emit any shocking energy fluctuation and was difficult to detect. Before they could blink, the void-pierced sword chi pierced through the forehead of an Earth Demon clansman and came out of his brain, shooting towards another Black Goblin clan genius. This Black Goblin clan genius was startled, but he couldn't dodge and his brain was pierced. After killing 2 foreign race geniuses in a row, the others finally reacted. Their faces changed as they hastily retreated. At the same time, they shot out silvery white sword chi in an attempt to shatter it. However, the speed of the void-pierced sword chi was too fast. Their attacks all missed. Under Chu Mu's control, the void-pierced sword chi pierced through them one by one. Once the void-pierced sword chi pierced through them, their insides would definitely be damaged, and they would die immediately. This is an absolute art run amidst the exclamations. The Black Goblin clan and Earth Demon clan geniuses who were still alive roared. The last Earth Demon clan genius quickly used his innate skill and escaped into the ground. A silvery white sword light flashed past, and the Earth Demon clan genius who had yet to completely escape into the ground disintegrated and disappeared with a shocked expression. After killing 9 foreign race geniuses in a row, the void-pierced sword chi dissipated. Only the last Black Goblin clan genius was left. Chu Mu quickly rushed out and raised his sword. The silvery white sword light pierced through the air and instantly traversed several hundred meters, piercing through the void towards the Black Goblin clan genius. The Black Goblin clan genius was startled. He quickly shot out a black light and retreated at the same time. He used his movement technique and turned into a black light, wanting to escape. How could Chu Mu let him leave? His speed exploded and he sped up again. Brandishing his longsword, a silver-white sword light flashed and flew past. The Black Goblin that had transformed into a black light that was attempting to escape fell down, disintegrated, and dissipated. Slaughter points were obtained. The void-pierced sword chi is indeed powerful. Killing 10 foreign race geniuses in an instant, Chu Mu was inwardly overjoyed. If he didn't use the void-pierced sword chi, even if he unleashed his top high god realm sword intent and law force, he wouldn't be able to kill 10 foreign race geniuses in such a short time. However, the void-pierced sword chi did just that. One sword chi killed 9 foreign race geniuses at an extremely fast speed. Unfortunately, even though the void-pierced sword chi was powerful and could be controlled from afar, it consumed a lot of energy. Half of the void-pierced sword chi that he had painstakingly cultivated was gone. It would take some time to recover. Although it wasn't a long time, the drawbacks were obvious in battle. Moreover, controlling the void-pierced sword chi consumed a lot of his divine sense. Regarding this, Chu Mu couldn't do anything about it. After all, his void-pierced sword chi was only at the small success stage, and his divine sense was only equivalent to a peak 8-star King Realm Master. Different secret arts had different characteristics. The unique characteristic of the void-pierced sword chi secret art was that during cultivation, a part of the void-pierced sword chi's main body would be condensed in the dantian. Using the main body as the foundation, a part of the void-pierced sword chi would be separated from the main body. For example, Chu Mu directly separated half of the main body and used 10 breaths time to absorb the spatial energy in the air to condense the separated half back to the small success stage. If he didn't use the 10 breaths time to absorb the spatial energy, the separated void-pierced sword chi's power would only be half of the small success stage. Unless he cultivated the void-pierced sword chi to perfection, only then would he be able to easily display the void-pierced sword chi to perfection and quickly recover. The void-pierced sword chi is indeed powerful, but it can only be used as a trump card. Chu Mu thought to himself. A powerful secret art could only be used as a trump card instead of a regular combat method. He felt a little helpless. As this thought flashed across his mind, Chu Mu quickly used the method of cultivating the void-pierced sword chi to absorb the spatial energy in the air. Silver light spots rapidly gathered and entered Chu Mu's body, moving towards his dantian. They were quickly absorbed by the half-back to the small success stage of the void pierce sword chi. After about 10 breaths time, the half-back to its original state. 10 breaths time was actually not long. It could also be considered very short. However, in a battle between experts, 1 breath's time was enough to change the outcome of the battle, let alone 10 breaths time. This was the first time Chu Mu used the Void Pierce Sword Chi. He knew how powerful the Void Pierce Sword Chi was. He was even more confident to enter the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking again. Apart from entering the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking again, Chu Mu had another purpose, which was to kill as many foreign races as possible. It would be best if they were foreign races without life mark. Once they were killed, they would die for real. Those who could enter the trial realm were more or less geniuses. Those who could come to the Iron Blood City were true geniuses. After going through the Iron Blood City, the land of inheritance, and so on, they were even elites among geniuses. The more people Chu Mu killed, the weaker the power of the foreign races would be. I wonder how far away is my current strength when compared to geniuses at the level of God's Son? Chu Mu thought to himself. Suddenly, he had a strong desire to meet a God's Son of a foreign race. Even if he was killed once, he wouldn't mind. Chapter 1171. Time flowed by like sand between one's fingers. 3 months had passed. Inside the massacre's secret realm, there were killings happening at every moment. Most people with 3 broken life marks would choose to leave the massacre's secret realm. After all, it was more important to stay alive. If they died, they would have nothing. Every day, geniuses of the 100 tribes would gather around the Iron Blood battle steel to watch the changes of the names on the steel. On this day, many geniuses of the 100 tribes gathered to watch the Iron Blood battle ranking. All of a sudden, the last name on the Iron Blood battle list shone and disappeared. Then, a new name appeared and took its place. Chu Mu is from the human clan. That's great. We have one more member of the human race. Who said that Chu Mu didn't dare to face the alien races? Now he is on the Iron Blood battle ranking. Who knows how many alien races he has killed? Compared with the joy of the human clan, the alien races looked gloomy. Chu Mu was from the human clan and was on the Iron Blood battle ranking. The slaughter points he gained were accumulated from the lives of other races. When Chu Mu's name was on the Iron Blood battle ranking, Chu Mu also sensed it. Finally, I'm on the Iron Blood battle ranking. A smile appeared on Chu Mu's face. He had entered the slaughter's secret realm 1 month later than the others, but after 2 months of continuous killing, he had gained killing points and finally made it into the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking. It should be noted that after a few months, the names on the Iron Blood battle list had become more stable. Unlike at the beginning, as long as one was lucky enough to kill a few people and gain some killing points, they could be listed on the list, but they would soon be pushed out. Now, as long as there were no accidents, the Iron Blood battle ranking would remain unchanged. Being on the Iron Blood battle ranking meant that one would have the opportunity to enter the Inheritance Underground Palace and get the inheritance. After entering the Massacre's secret realm for 2 months, Chu Mu had killed over 300 people from other races. However, Chu Mu had yet to die even once. This was because none of the other race geniuses he had encountered were able to kill him. Suddenly, Chu Mu felt a sliver of coldness pass through the dense fiendish aura and invade him, causing his entire body to feel cold. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu immediately used the inch step. It was as if he had teleported. A cold gleam instantly pierced through the void like an awl. Although the attack missed, it did not stop and continued to slash through the air. There was no resistance in the air. Chu Mu used inch steps again. His figure moved and dodged the swift and strange attack again. The 5-phase sword swung out and a silvery white sword gleam flashed past. The silver sword light disappeared into the void and mist. The coldness came from another angle again. Chu Mu unceasingly used inch step, unceasingly brandishing his sword, and used the minor shattering void 8 style's sword technique to counterattack. He seemed to be attacking randomly, stabbing here and slashing there, as if he was fighting with the air. However, in reality, Chu Mu did have an opponent. An extremely powerful opponent, one that caused him to be completely focused and vigilant. This opponent was extremely strange. It was like a ghost that could not be seen or touched. If Chu Mu's perception was not far superior to other sort of Gojosian, he would have been sneakily attacked. In the blink of an eye, the two sides had exchanged dozens of blows, but Chu Mu still hadn't seen his opponent's figure. He could only vaguely catch a sliver of black. It was like a specter that shuttled through the air, faintly discernible. Every time it disappeared, it meant a strange attack was about to arrive. It was thrilling. Under the attacks of the two sides, the trees and stones around were silently penetrated or cut open. The weird battle made one's scalp tingle. Chu Mu was sure that this opponent, who was hard to see, was definitely the strongest enemy he had encountered since entering the Massacre Mystery Realm. Silent, every attack was extremely sharp and terrifying. It did not give him the slightest chance of survival. If it was not for his strength being strong enough, he would have been killed. The ethereal and hidden sharpness of the minor 8 styles of void shattering also made the enemy in the dark very vigilant. Suddenly, another sword appeared in Chu Mu's left hand. It was the Wind and Thunder sword. This was the first time he used the dual sword technique since entering the Massacre Mystery Realm. With the Wind and Thunder sword and 5-phase sword in hand, Chu Mu's strength increased a few times under the dual sword technique. In an instant, the Wind and Thunder sword in his left hand was the 32 swords of Wind and Thunder sword in his right hand was the Autumn Water Eternal Sky sword. The wind and thunder roared, and the autumn water ran through and intersected. In the wind and thunder that were full of terrifying destructive power, traces of killing intent were faintly discernible, attacking the front. Everywhere it passed, dust flew and then turned into powder. The two swords danced, and in an instant the ethereal sword technique changed greatly. Violent wind and torrential rain, mountain torrents erupted, and volcanic magma raged. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. Chu Mu's incomparably tyrannical physical strength and the divine wilderness sword essence were fully displayed, causing destructive attacks to the surroundings. Facing Chu Mu's violent attacks, the faintly discernible figure did not retreat at all. It shuttled through the violent wind and torrential rain with ease, counterattacking time and time again. Every counterattack was incomparably sharp, like the deadly fangs of a venomous snake. Chu Mu changed a few battle styles, but still could not do anything to the opponent. He felt a little helpless. The strength of this opponent was really too tyrannical. Calming down, Chu Mu knew that this opponent was not so easy to deal with. Once he calmed down, the flow of the air around him seemed to be clearly perceived. His 6 senses gradually increased to the limit. His eyes became sharper, and his pupils seemed to have become a shattered silver color. He could see the sword to the limit. His ears trembled slightly, and all the sounds around him suddenly became incomparably clear and entered his ears. All the pores on his body seemed to open at the same time. Every fine hair on his skin seemed to have a life of its own, like a spirit. He could even feel the flow of the air, and even the floating of the dust in the air. Sword touch. 3 of the 5 realms of sword techniques were activated. It was unprecedentedly clear, as if he had grasped a part of the world. This feeling, as if he had grasped a part of space, made Chu Mu completely immersed in it. In an instant, Chu Mu's opponent discovered that his target seemed to have changed, but he could not tell what the change was. Next, he quickly discovered that every incomparably sharp and incomparably tricky attack was easily dodged by the opponent. It was different from the previous dangerous attack. It was as if the opponent could sense it in advance. The counterattacking sword slashed out, bringing with it a little ethereal. It flickered with a silver-white luster, and passed through the void. Every sword was close to the opponent's body, wanting to kill him with one strike. It was extremely dangerous. Up until now, neither side had spoken a single word. Instead, they were engaged in an incomparably bizarre and dangerous confrontation. The area within a radius of a few hundred meters had become a dangerous place. Some of the alien races who passed by wanted to take advantage of it, but they were unlucky to find that once they came within a radius of a few hundred meters, they would be affected. A few unlucky ones were directly killed without a sound, which frightened the other alien races. These alien race geniuses were killing each other thousands of meters away. The three aspects of sword sight, sword hearing, and sword touch had reached the pinnacle. Moreover, there were signs of fusion, which raised Chu Mu's control of the battle to the limit, and seemed to be surpassing it. What would happen after fusion? What would happen after surpassing it? Chu Mu did not know, nor did he think about it. Because now, he only had one thought, and that was to kill his opponent. Unknowingly, his swordsmanship improved bit by bit. Chu Mu himself did not know. He only knew that his sword was faster, more ethereal, and more sharp. The improvement of Chu Mu's swordsmanship brought greater pressure to his opponent. It also strengthened his determination to kill Chu Mu. At this moment, they had forgotten that they had life marked. Even if they killed each other, it would not be true death. Silver Sword Light, parallel to the void, lesser void shattering sword art's ninth move. This sword was unbreakable. The figure that had been hiding in the air was finally forced out. It was close-fitting black, and its face could not be seen clearly. Shadow Clan. Chu Mu's eyes shone brighter. The Shadow Clan was one of the 100 clans. It was not ranked high, but there was not much difference in strength between the top 20 clans. Therefore, although the Shadow Clan was not as strong as the Human Clan, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be some powerful geniuses, such as this person. The Shadow Clan's talent was similar to the Earth Demon Clan's talent. However, the Earth Demon Clan's talent was Earth Escape, while the Shadow Clan's talent was Shadow Escape. Transforming into a shadow was the most basic. Above that, the shadow would merge into the air. Above that, the shadow would not only merge into the air, but it would also not be revealed when attacking. "You are the Shadow Clan's Shensi?" Chu Mu asked in return. His tone was affected by his current state. It was very light, and there was even a trace of emptiness. The Shadow Clan's Shensi. This was Chu Mu's guess. "Human, you do have some eyesight." A dark, low voice sounded, and it seemed to come from all directions into Chu Mu's ears. "Next, I will kill you." As the voice fell, the Shadow Clan's Shensi's figure seemed to be torn apart in the wind, dispersing like smoke. Chu Mu did not feel any sense of danger. While he was surprised, the bodies of some alien races thousands of meters away, who were preparing to be fishermen, collapsed one after another. They had been killed by the Shadow Clan's Shensi, one by one. With his sword vision, Chu Mu could vaguely see flashing figures. Every time a figure flashed, it meant the end of the life of an alien race genius. Among them, there were no humans. Chu Mu did not intervene. He was adjusting. He did not want others to be around when he fought with the Shadow Clan's Shensi. Presumably, the Shadow Clan's Shensi had the same idea as him. They did not want to be disturbed in their battle. Not even the slightest bit of disturbance was allowed. Therefore, the Shadow Clan's Shensi took action, cleaning up the surrounding flies until not a single one was left. Not a single one of the more than 20 alien races could withstand a single strike from the Shadow Clan's Shensi. As the figure flashed, the alien race geniuses were harvested like weed. After killing them all, the Shadow Clan's Shensi attacked again, accompanied by a deep, cold voice. "Remember, the person who killed you is called Ing-E." Chapter 1172. Without any interference, Shadow Wing attacked again. A voice filled with murderous intent entered Chu Mu's ears. Shadow Wing seemed to have completely blended into the air. His eyes could not capture him. His voice was also very fleeting, as if it came from all directions. It was impossible to grasp. Suddenly, a trace of darkness spread out from nowhere. In the blink of an eye, it was as if the night had swallowed up the day. It invaded the surroundings and covered the entire area. Because of this, the world became dark. In just an instant, Chu Mu was plunged into the darkness. A gloomy feeling seemed to be accompanied by gusts of chilly wind. Chu Mu only felt that his eyes were blinded and he could not see. Even his perception was greatly affected. It was as if he had entered a place where his 5 senses were isolated. The only thing that could work was the touch of the sword. Perfect touch of the sword. In the darkness there was silence. It was a deathly stillness that made people feel lonely and lonely. They could not see or hear anything. It was enough to drive people crazy. However, Chu Mu remained calm because he knew that at this time, he absolutely could not lose his cool. This might be a kind of ultimate technique. In this darkness, Chu Mu could not feel the passage of time. It felt as if thousands of years had passed. In this darkness that was so silent that it could drive people crazy, a figure quietly flashed and appeared behind Chu Mu. However, Chu Mu did not seem to notice. A dagger in the deep darkness was raised silently. It was aimed at Chu Mu's neck. It was like a venomous snake opening its mouth. Its fangs were covered in venom as it viciously pierced down. Strangely, the fang-like dagger pierced Chu Mu's neck. It hit, but Chu Mu's figure disappeared in an instant. It was an afterimage. Shadow Wing's heart suddenly jumped. When he realized that something was wrong, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. His heart trembled and he hurriedly turned into a shadow. He merged into the darkness and disappeared again. At the place where he had been, a fine silver-white light flashed and disappeared into the darkness without a sound. It was a silent battle, a battle without smoke, but it was extremely dangerous. Because of the darkness, the sword vision and sword hearing were completely disrupted. Their 5 senses seemed to have been sealed off, and even the power of their consciousness was greatly affected. If it were anyone else, they would most likely be at a disadvantage and easily killed by Shadow Wing. However, Chu Mu had reached the 5th level of swordsmanship and had cultivated the touch of the sword to perfection. He could sense the changes in his surroundings through his pores. Even the slightest change could not escape his senses. Shadow Wing was very puzzled. He had used the ultimate technique of the Shadow Clan. Any opponent in this darkness would basically die under his hands, but how could this human easily avoid his attack, and even make the most accurate counterattack? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't understand why. Chu Mu naturally wouldn't tell him. As a divine son, the means that Shadow Wing possessed weren't that simple. Chu Mu also had his own means. Both sides were constantly exchanging blows, looking for the best opportunity to unleash their strongest attack and kill the other party. They had forgotten that the other party had 3 life marks on their bodies. Even if they were killed, it wouldn't be a true death. Fight, fight, fight. Suddenly, Shadow Wing's figure flashed and turned into dozens of figures. They attacked from all directions, alternating between real and fake. Every figure was fake, and every figure could be real at the same time. For a moment, Chu Mu's touch of the sword couldn't sense which figure was real because Shadow Wing's true body was constantly changing among these figures, making it impossible for Chu Mu to grasp. This was also a move that Shadow Wing was proud of. Chu Mu didn't immediately attack. Instead, he accumulated power and waited, raising his essence, energy, and spirit to the peak. With both swords in hand, the bodies of the swords trembled slightly. The sword hums spread out in waves, affecting the surroundings. Dozens of figures attacked almost at the same time. As the figures overlapped, it gave Chu Mu an extremely strong sense of danger. His heart suddenly jumped, and in an instant, Chu Mu's 2 swords moved. The sound of the air being torn apart rang out, and the silver-white sword light flickered in the darkness. The lesser 8 styles of shattering void was used, and the sword light of the 2 swords intertwined, covering the surroundings. Instantly, the figures were cut into pieces. Shadow Wing's true body passed through Chu Mu's sword shadows. The pitch-black dagger that was like a poisonous fang swept past Chu Mu's neck. With his neck cut, Chu Mu's figure also instantly dissipated. At the critical moment, he used the inch step to avoid the fatal blow. Suddenly, an incomparably terrifying aura erupted from Chu Mu's body. The aura was extremely sharp. When it erupted, it was like a heavenly sword that soared into the sky and pierced through the firmament. Even the darkness that Shadow Wing had created with his ultimate skill shook in an instant, as if it was about to shatter. The incomparably terrifying aura, the incomparably terrifying sharpness, and the unprecedented feeling caused Shadow Wing's body to stiffen in an instant. In his heart there was only horror, and his soul seemed to be numb. Too strong, too tyrannical. He had never felt such a tyrannical sharpness. That was sword intent. Terrifying sword intent. For the first time, Shadow Wing felt such an indescribably tyrannical sword intent. He was shocked, even if it was only for a moment. At the same time, Chu Mu directly mobilized the Void Rush sword chi in his dantian. He did not divide it, but completely mobilized it. In an instant, it rushed out of his dantian and condensed on the 5-phase sword. The sword pierced forward. This sword was silent, without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. It was even difficult to feel the fluctuation of power, but it gave Shadow Wing a fatal sense of crisis. The bigger problem was that his body could not react because of the moment of numbness. The silent sword seemed to have penetrated through layers of time and space. With a domineering stance that could not be avoided, the sword pierced forward and pierced through. Shadow Wing's eyes could only see a subtle silver-white color. It was extremely fast and indescribable. Immediately, he felt a pain between his eyebrows. His brain seemed to be crushed, and his vision turned dark. Dead. Shadow Wing's body quickly collapsed and disappeared. One of the divine sons of the Shadow Clan had died. Not good. Seeing his sword pierce through Shadow Wing's forehead and his body disintegrated and disappeared, Chu Mu finally realized what had happened. As one of the Shadow Clan's godchildren, Shadow Wing's strength was undoubtedly tyrannical. Chu Mu had no choice but to focus 120% of his attention to battle with Shadow Wing. On the other hand, Chu Mu's strength was also tyrannical. Similarly, Shadow Wing also had to focus 120% of his attention. Under the intense battle, both sides only had one thought, and that was to kill the other. They had completely forgotten that they were in the massacre's secret realm, and that both sides had life marks. Even if they killed each other, it would only be a fake death. Determined to kill, coupled with the opponent's tyrannical strength, Chu Mu completely erupted, displaying his full strength. His top high god rank sword intent was not held back. Shadow Wing, who had never felt a top high god rank sword intent before, was intimidated in an instant. In a battle between masters, only a single breath was needed. A split second of intimidation was enough. In order to avoid any accidents, Chu Mu did not hesitate to use his Void Pierce Sword Chi, a complete minor completion Void Pierce Sword Chi, to kill Shadow Wing. After killing him and seeing Shadow Wing's body disintegrate, Chu Mu remembered that this was the massacre's secret realm, and Shadow Wing still had 3 life marks. Therefore, he wasn't really dead. Moreover, Shadow Wing was most likely aware that he had exposed his top high god rank sword intent. "I'm afraid I need to be more careful from now on," Chu Mu inwardly said. His low-level high god realm sword intent and law force had already made him a thorn in the side of many foreign races. Once the news of his top-level high god realm sword intent spread out, it wouldn't be as simple as a thorn in their side, it would be like a thorn in their heart that had to be removed. Chu Mu had a feeling that Shadow Clan's godchild Ing-Yi would most likely spread the news, attracting more foreign race geniuses to kill him. At that time, he would become the target of the foreign race's geniuses. Even the foreign race's godchildren would come looking for him and kill him, shattering his 3 life marks. At that time, he could either leave the massacre's secret realm or be killed by them. If he left the massacre's secret realm and was killed 3 times, Chu Mu's name would fall out of the Iron Blood 100 battle list once more. In fact, as long as he died once, his name would more or less fall out of the Iron Blood 100 battle list, because every time he died, the amount of slaughter points he received would be reduced by half. Therefore, he couldn't die even once. Thinking of his slaughter points, Chu Mu checked them and a smile appeared on his face. After killing Shadow Clan's godchild Yi, Chu Mu obtained half of his slaughter points, nearly 10,000 points. Now, he had more than 10,000 slaughter points. With more than 10,000 slaughter points, Chu Mu's ranking on the Iron Blood 100 battle list continued to rise, reaching the 600th place. What's going on? How did that human's ranking rise so much all of a sudden? In Iron Blood City, many people gathered around the Iron Blood 100 battle steel exclaimed. Look, Shadow Clan's Shadowwing's ranking fell. Could it be that Chu Mu killed Shadowwing and obtained half of his slaughter points? That's why his ranking rose so much and Shadowwing's ranking fell so much? A guess immediately stirred up a storm in everyone's hearts. Impossible, absolutely impossible. How can a mere human be a match for our godchild? The Shadow Clan's people were agitated and immediately retorted. As soon as these words came out, many people agreed with them. Chu Mu was the human clan's Sword of Gojoseon, but he wasn't a human godchild. Shadowwing was the godchild of the Shadow Clan. The difference in strength between a godchild and a godchild was very obvious, even if they were from different races. If Shadowwing's ranking fell and Chu Mu's ranking rose because Chu Mu killed Shadowwing, didn't that mean that Chu Mu had the strength of a godchild? If the human clan had a Sword of Gojoseon with the strength of a godchild, it wouldn't be a good thing for any race other than the human clan. Instead, it would be a terrible thing. Every godchild would become the pillar of their clan when they grew up, and their strength was very tyrannical. But no matter how they guessed, the fact was that Chu Mu had killed Shadowwing and slaughtered the Shadow Clan in the secret realm. Their hearts were in turmoil. Chapter 1173. No one knew where this news started, but it gradually spread, reaching the ears of almost every genius in the massacre's secret realm. High-grade high god rank sword intent. Are you sure this news is true? Impossible. I've never heard of anyone possessing a high-grade high god rank sword intent, even during the era of gods. In fact, there were indeed sword masters who had mastered high-grade high god rank sword intent in the era of gods, and there were more than one. After all, that was the human race's golden age, the era with the most geniuses and masters. Following the fall of the sword god, the human race's fortune declined, gradually declining. However, the era of gods was too far away from the present. Moreover, due to the War of Gods, it caused the center of the ancient world to shatter. For a long time, those who lived in the center of the ancient world lived in extreme danger, without a single day of peace. It could be said that it was the darkest period of the ancient world. Many inheritances were cut off during this period, and many records disappeared, leaving a gap in history. Whether it's true or not, Chu Mu must die. When Chu Mu displayed his low-grade high god rank sword intent and low-grade high god rank law force, he had already become a thorn in the side of the foreign races, and it was even more so after he displayed his space force. Now, there was actually news that Chu Mu had mastered a high-grade high god rank sword intent. To any foreign race, this was absolutely bad news. According to the information they had, among the 9 god princes, only the first god prince sword intent and law force had reached mid-grade high god rank, whereas the other god princes were all low-grade high god rank. There's actually someone in our human race whose sword intent has reached high-grade high god rank? In contrast to the anger and killing intent of the foreign races, the human race's Sword of Gojoseon were filled with suspicion, and after suspicion, shock. The 8 divine princes who had entered the massacre's secret realm were all shocked. They couldn't believe it. They didn't know Chu Mu before, but as Chu Mu became famous, his name was gradually remembered by every Sword of Gojoseon of the human race. Even the 8 divine princes didn't ignore him, especially after Chu Mu escaped from the 10th divine prince of the underworld god clan in the beast-refining wilderness. Now, when they heard the news, they were incomparably shocked. Among the 9 godchildren, the number 1 godchild with the highest talent had a mid-level high god realm sword intent. Compared to a high-level high god realm sword intent, there was only a small gap. If the news was true, then the human race might have another deity. Regardless of whether the news was true or not, the divine princes of various races mobilized to find Chu Mu and kill Chu Mu. They also knew that Chu Mu had 3 life marks and could die 3 times. Even if they couldn't truly kill Chu Mu, they still wanted to make sure that Chu Mu wouldn't have the chance to enter the Inheritance Underground Palace. In a short time, the foreign race's divine princes actually rushed in the direction of the Great Hall. Chu Mu also heard the news, and when he heard that he had a high-level high god rank sword intent, he didn't know whether to laugh or to do something else. His sword intent was actually a top-grade high god rank sword intent, not a high-level high god rank sword intent. There was only a small gap, but the significance was different. The news was naturally spread by Shadow Wings, but Shadow Wings had never sensed a top-grade high god rank sword intent, not even a high-level high god rank sword intent. As for low-grade high god rank sword intent, Shadow Wings knew about it, and could estimate the strength of a mid-grade high god rank sword intent. Because Shadow Wings had never sensed a high-level high god rank sword intent, and based on the information he had, he directly ruled out the possibility that Chu Mu had a top-grade high god rank sword intent, believing it to be a high-level high god rank sword intent. As for whether Chu Mu had a high-level high god rank sword intent or not, Shadow Wings wasn't clear. A high-level high god rank sword intent was already frightening enough. If he also had a high-level high god rank sword intent, it was unimaginable. Regardless, Shadow Wings had succeeded. After he spread the news, Chu Mu became the center of attention, the center of the storm. Then, a second piece of news came out. The initiator of the news was the Nether God tribe's divine prince, and the participants were other races' divine princes. The content of the news was that the human race had to hand over Chu Mu, otherwise, the various races would join forces to target the human race, massacring the human race, forcing the Sword of Gojoseon to leave the massacre's secret realm, preventing them from entering the Inheritance Underground Palace. When this news came out, the human race was shocked and enraged. Although the human race's strength wasn't weak, they couldn't contend against the other races' joint forces. The difference in strength was too great. Even the Nether God tribe, the number 1 race, couldn't contend against the other races' joint forces. Therefore, when the various races' divine princes released the news targeting the human race's Sword of Gojoseon were enraged, while some of the human race's Sword of Gojoseon felt fear. When Chu Mu heard the news, he was greatly surprised. He didn't expect the other races to come up with such a strategy to deal with him. Regarding this, Chu Mu felt a headache coming on, and so did the other human race's Sword of Gojoseon. Pressure, enormous pressure. Under the joint forces of various races, the human race's Sword of Gojoseon suffered an unprecedented blow, besieged by other races, killed, and so on. Massacre Secret Realm, inside the human race's main hall. Many human races' Sword of Gojoseon died under the joint forces of other races. Resurrected inside the main hall, each and every one of them had an ugly expression on their faces. What should we do? If we go out again, we'll definitely be besieged by other races. When that happens, we'll also be killed. I want to leave the massacre's secret realm. After all, my life mark has been shattered, and I only have one true life left. A Sword of Gojoseon sighed. All of this is because of Chu Mu. Someone gritted his teeth. That's right. If it weren't for Chu Mu, the other races wouldn't have joined forces, and we wouldn't have ended up like this. In one sentence, he pushed all the blame onto Chu Mu. We should let Chu Mu deal with the other races and take responsibility for what he has done. Bullshit. All of a sudden, a furious roar sounded. It was a Sword of Gojoseon who didn't have a strong physique. In fact, he even looked a little short and skinny, but his eyes emitted an incomparably dense cold light, like cold lightning piercing through the air, sweeping across the sword of Gojoseon, who pushed the blame onto Chu-Mu. He said angrily, "Since ancient times, the other races have been the enemies of our human race. Those other races can't wait to kill all of our geniuses and completely decline. Now we have Chu-Mu, a super genius, and it's our fortune that he's here. The reason why the other races join forces to kill us is to force Chu-Mu out. Their goal is to kill Chu-Mu, because they are afraid that Chu-Mu will become a threat to the other races when he grows up." His words were like 10,000 swords shooting out, piercing through the hearts of everyone present. Think about it yourselves. If now, because of the pressure from the other races, you push the blame onto Chu-Mu and force Chu-Mu to grow up, what face do you have left? What face do you have left? What face do you have left? What face do you have to face those ancestors who sacrificed themselves for the survival of the human race? Haven't you thought about it? If Chu-Mu really has that kind of talent, how important is it to the human race? Do you want to become a sinner of the human race? It had to be said that this short sword of Gojoseon's words were like 10,000 arrows piercing through the hearts of everyone present. Their faces changed greatly, and they fell into deep thought again. The sword of Gojoseon, who were criticized, had very ugly expressions. They wanted to refute, but they didn't know how to do so, because the content of the criticism wasn't wrong. If they refuted, they would most likely be despised and even ostracized by the other sword of Gojoseon. Clapping sounds were heard. It was applause. Someone walked in from outside the hall. Ninth Shensi. Everyone was stunned at first, then they shouted. As the Shensi of the human race, he was the mainstay of the human race in the future. He was qualified to be respected. You said it very well. We humans are all swordsmen. We should have our own edge. No matter how strong the other races are, they can't make us bow down. The ninth Shensi spoke almost word by word. Every word was full of power and sharpness. Ninth Shensi, what should we do now? Someone asked. The human race's strength was too weak in the face of the other races. After our discussion, we've decided that the 9 of us will stay, and all of you will leave the massacre secret realm. The ninth Shensi made a shocking decision. When the sword of Gojoseon heard this, their expressions changed greatly. Their first reaction to this decision was that they couldn't accept it. Wasn't this equivalent to bowing down to the other races? However, some of the smarter sword of Gojoseon immediately reacted. By doing this, they wouldn't be bowing down to the other races. Handing over Chu-Mu would be bowing down to the other races. By doing this, they would be avoiding the joint attack of the other races, making them unable to use their strength. It would be like punching cotton with all their strength. The feeling of emptiness would make them so upset that they would vomit blood. Ninth Shensi, why are we leaving the massacre secret realm and the 9 of you staying? Although Chu-Mu isn't a Shensi, he's very strong. Therefore, he'll join forces with the 8 of us to form a team and kill the other races in the massacre secret realm. We'll let them know that the human race isn't to be trifled with, the ninth Shensi said. His tone was full of killing intent. The pressure of the other races had aroused his anger. There were still more than 10,000 sword of Gojoseon in the massacre secret realm. If they moved together, it would be too big a target. If they were separated, they would be easily killed by the other races. Rather than becoming a killing point for the other races, it would be better to leave the massacre secret realm, cultivate and wait for the opening of the secret realm of heritage. As for the 8 divine sons and Chu-Mu, a total of 9 people teamed up and formed a small team. They wandered around the slaughter secret realm, specifically looking for foreign race teams to kill. After killing them, they would leave immediately. Their mobility was very strong, and each one of them was not to be underestimated. When they teamed up, their strength would be even stronger. With such a team, if they cooperated well, they would definitely cause significant losses to the other races. When the sword of Gojoseon understood this, they all looked excited. They clenched their fists and said excitedly, "Ninth Shensi, please kill more of the other races and let them know the power of the human race." Chapter 1174. In the human clan hall, most of the sword of Gojoseon had left the massacre secret realm. At this time, there were only 9 sword of Gojoseon left in the human clan hall. Chumu was one of them. "Chumu, let me introduce you. This is the second god's son, Murong Qingfeng." The 9th god's son gestured to the leader, the sword of Gojoseon, who looked so casual that it seemed like he could fly away with the wind at any time. "Greetings, second god's son." Chumu cupped his hands. The second god's son, Murong Qingfeng, smiled faintly and nodded at Chumu. "This is the third god's son, Tuobajan. Like you, he's a body-refining sword of Gojoseon." The 9th god's son introduced the second person. He was tall and muscular and looked like he was made of iron. The lines on his face were extremely rigid. "Greetings, third god's son." Chumu cupped his hands. "Haha, you're also a body-refining sword of Gojoseon. If there's a chance, let's compete in body refining." Tuobajan's eyes were very bright, with a hint of battle intent. "Okay." Chumu nodded. "This is the 4th god's son." The 9th god's son introduced one by one to Chumu, and Chumu cupped his hands to the god's sons one by one. The god's sons either smiled at Chumu, nodded, or cupped their hands. This meant that the god's sons had preliminarily acknowledged Chumu. As the god's sons of Heavenly Sword Hall, there were very few people who could be acknowledged by them except for themselves. The second god's son was called Murong Qingfeng, the third god's son was called Tuobajan, and the 4th god's son was called Liu. The 5th god's son was called Lin Yiming, the 6th god's son was called Song Lei, the 7th god's son was called Luo Qiushan, the 8th god's son was called Lian Qingyu, and the 9th god's son was called Feng Guohai. The 8 god's sons were all men. "Chumu, what is a high-level high god rank sword intent like? I've never experienced it before." Liu looked at Chumu and said. The other 7 divine princes also looked at Chumu with curiosity in their eyes. In the next moment, an indescribable sharpness shot out from Chumu's body like a heavenly sword, straight into the clouds and shattering the heavens. The terrifying sword intent and indescribable sharpness made the 8 divine princes tremble and their hair stand on end. Their eyes were shining like cold lightning, and their muscles were tense. They were ready to attack at any time. Chumu converged his sword intent. Just now, he had only released a high-level high god rank sword intent, not a peak high god rank. What a powerful sword intent! High god rank sword intent is really amazing. The 8 divine princes were all astonished. "Chumu, other than your high-level high god rank sword intent, your power of laws has also reached high-level high god rank, right?" Suddenly, the second divine prince looked at Chumu seriously and asked in a serious tone. "Yes." Since Chumu had already displayed a high-level high god rank sword intent, he didn't plan to hide his power of laws. Hearing Chumu's admission, the 8 divine princes were shocked at first, but then they revealed a joyful expression. However, there was also a hint of bitterness in their joy. High god rank sword intent, and high god rank power of laws. When the two were combined, no one could compare. Even the number 1 divine prince of the Heavenly Sword Hall couldn't compare. High god rank sword intent and power of laws means that your potential is limitless. However, your strength, I've killed Yi. Chumu said indifferently. "What?" The 8 divine princes were shocked again. Yi was the divine prince of the Shadow Clan. Basically, all the divine princes of the 100 races knew of his existence. Compared to the human divine princes, there was still a gap in strength between the divine princes of the Shadow Clan and Yi. However, since Chumu could kill Yi, it meant that Chumu's strength was at least on par with the divine princes of the Shadow Clan. All in all, the gap in strength between him and the other divine princes wasn't that big. Good. This way, our team of 9 will be able to unleash the full potential of our strength. If Chu Mu's strength wasn't enough, they would have advised Chu Mu to leave the massacre secret realm first. However, it seemed that there was no need for him to leave. They also believed that Chu Mu wouldn't lie about this. Our team of 9 is the strongest team. Let's call it the Sword Light team. We'll let those foreign races know that we, the human race, are not to be trifled with. At this point, the Sword Light team was established. There were a total of 9 members, consisting of the 8 divine princes of the human race and the Sword of Gojoseon, whose strength was comparable to the human divine prince. Let's go. As soon as they finished speaking, the 9 of them immediately took action. They quickly left the human race palace and headed outside. Chu Mu was at the back and could clearly see that the 8 divine princes were using stealth technique. If he hadn't seen them with his own eyes, he would have thought that they didn't exist. This was because he couldn't sense any aura fluctuations at all. This meant that the 8 divine princes were extremely skilled in stealth technique. Following behind the 8 divine princes and watching them move stealthily, Chu Mu constantly adjusted himself and improved his stealth technique. Next, each of the divine sons gradually displayed their respective abilities. The second divine prince, Murong Qingfeng, had an extremely special ability to sense the wind. This ability was something that no one else could understand except for himself. Without needing any words, Murong Qingfeng turned around and left. Everyone followed him. Not long after, Chu Mu and the others sensed the presence of the foreign races in the distance. There were nearly 100 foreign races led by the 3 divine princes. 3 people on 1. Let's work together to kill the 3 foreign race divine princes and then kill the others, Murong Qingfeng said telepathically. Although Chu Mu had just joined the team, there was still a tacit understanding between them. At the optimal distance, the 9 of them moved. In an instant, they attacked at their fastest speed and used all kinds of techniques at the same time. A gust of wind blew and 9 figures appeared in a flash. In an instant, 9 sword light flashed in the air. 3 of them attacked one of the foreign race divine princes. It was too fast and too sudden. The 3 foreign race divine princes didn't expect it at all. Speaking of which, the foreign races had reached a temporary agreement to join forces. In the massacre secret realm, they only had one enemy, and that was the human race. Before the human race was dealt with, there wouldn't be any conflicts between them for the time being. Compared to the situation where the other races were enemies, this situation was obviously much safer and easier for them to relax. They even thought that the human race wouldn't dare to fight back in the face of the pressure from the other races. They thought that the human race would either hand over Chu Mu and withstand the pressure or leave the massacre secret realm as a group. They didn't expect that the divine princes of the human race would form the strongest team to hunt them down. By the time the 3 foreign race divine princes reacted, it was already too late. Their strength was originally a little weaker than that of the human race divine princes. Moreover, they were unexpectedly attacked by the joint forces of the 3 human race divine princes. As the sword light flashed, the 3 foreign race divine princes were hit almost at the same time. Their bodies collapsed and disappeared. The 9 sword light turned and attacked the other foreign race divine princes. They were like tigers in a flock of sheep. No one could stop them. 10 breaths. In just 10 breaths, nearly 100 foreign race divine princes were all killed. Every one of them turned into slaughter point. Chu Mu killed 11 foreign race divine princes and obtained thousands of slaughter points. The death of the 3 foreign race divine princes caused their slaughter points to be reduced by half. Their ranking on the 100 battles steel fell directly. The sudden change shocked the foreign race divine princes in Iron Blood City. The human race Sword of Gojoseon was stunned at first, then overjoyed. Especially those who knew the divine prince's plan. The Sword of Gojoseon formed by the divine princes and Chu Mu had already started to move. After destroying the first foreign race team, they didn't stop and immediately looked for the second one. The foreign race teamed up and divided into teams. Their goal was to find Chu Mu and kill him. This would also give the human race's Sword of Gojoseon a chance to kill Chu Mu. What's going on? In Iron Blood City, at the 100 Battles Steel, the foreign race divine princes stared at the changes in the names on the steel and cried out in shock. In just a few days, the rankings of many foreign race divine princes on the 100 Battles Steel had fallen. Some had even fallen out of the 100 Battles Steel. Some had fallen out of the 100 Battles Steel, and some had entered it. Among them, the names of 9 human race divine princes rose again and again. What's going on? In the Massacre Secret Realm, the Sword of Gojoseon formed by Chu Mu and the 8 divine princes had consecutively killed 6 foreign race teams. Each team had at least 100 people. 6 kills had increased everyone's kill points by quite a bit. We've killed 6 foreign race teams in a row. I think we've attracted the attention of other foreign race teams, said the 7th divine prince, Luo Qiushan. Yes, so we have to be more careful in the next hunt. Do it again. If there are any changes, give up immediately and leave the Massacre Secret Realm, said Song Lei. If we leave the Massacre Secret Realm, these foreign races will probably go crazy, said Feng Guohai with a smile. Hearing this, everyone smiled. Indeed, they had killed 6 foreign race teams in a row, which directly caused the names of some foreign race divine princes to fall out of the 100 Battles Steel. Among the names that came later, 2 of them were the Sword of Gojoseon of the human race. This meant that there were fewer foreign race divine princes on the 100 Battles Steel, and more human divine princes. The Sword of Gojoseon continued to move. With Murong Chengfeng's ability, they continued to search for foreign race divine princes teams, and then attacked and killed them. Under the joint attack of 8 divine princes and a powerful Sword of Gojoseon, whose strength was close to that of a divine prince, even some of the foreign race divine princes found it difficult to deal with, let alone those foreign race divine princes who were weaker than the divine princes. For the 10th time, the 10th team of the foreign race divine princes was also annihilated under the attack of the Sword of Gojoseon. The 11th team was led by the divine prince of the underworld tribe. Speaking of which, there were differences in strength among the divine princes of the 100 races. The average strength of the divine prince of the underworld tribe was undoubtedly the strongest. The attack this time was not completely successful. One of the 4 divine princes of the underworld tribe was killed, while the other 3 escaped at the critical moment. The target quickly changed. The Sword of Gojoseon of the Sword of Gojoseon left directly after killing the other foreign race divine princes. The fact that he did not fight with the 3 divine princes of the underworld tribe made the 3 divine princes furious. Chapter 1175. There were 20 humans on the Iron Blood battle ranking, which was 5 or 6 more than the first and second times. The more humans there were, the fewer foreign races there were. Every additional inheritance was equivalent to having 1 more expert in the future, which was one of the guarantees for the improvement of the strength of the race. After the 11th attack failed to kill all the foreign race geniuses, the subsequent attacks became more and more difficult because the foreign race geniuses were constantly on guard. The increasing difficulty of the attacks was also a kind of test. The Sword Radiance team did not give up, but continued to hide and look for opportunities to attack. There were only 9 of them, and each of them was extremely fast. Whether it was attacking or escaping, they were very fast. They were small targets and were not easy to be discovered. The Sword Radiance team was like a peerless assassin. If they missed their target, they would immediately escape, not giving the other party any chance to fight back. The increasing difficulty of the attacks also trained the Sword Radiance team, making them more cooperative and tacit. It also improved their abilities in all aspects. After the 20th attack, everyone found that the foreign race geniuses seemed to have disappeared. Instead, the divine princes of various races formed teams and were looking for the Sword Radiance team. In the secret realm of Massacre, The competition between the geniuses of the 100 races suddenly changed its nature and became a battle between the divine princes of the 100 races. Although there were differences in strength between the divine princes, it was not easy to kill each other. Chu Mu was able to kill Ing Yi because Ing Yi was momentarily stunned by his sword intent. Now that Ing Yi was mentally prepared, it was difficult to determine the outcome of the battle between Ing Yi and Chu Mu. Especially when there were many divine princes working together, the increase in strength was not as simple as 1+1. There were several times when the Sword Radiance team was in danger. They had to work together to escape because the foreign race divine princes had teamed up to deal with them. It was almost 1 against 100. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, the duration of the secret realm of massacre was up. Ha 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 ha, this is so refreshing. Tuoba Jean laughed, and his figure quickly faded. The other members of the Sword Radiance team also left the massacre's secret realm with smiles on their faces. After a few months of fighting, although they couldn't do anything to the divine princes of the foreign races, the divine princes of the foreign races couldn't do anything to them either. Although they were almost killed several times, they still managed to escape in the end. It should be known that the divine princes of the foreign races had teamed up, while there were only 8 divine princes of the human race. Including Chu Mu, there were 9 of them in total. Compared to the Sword Light team, the divine princes of the alien races were so angry that they almost vomited blood. The first name on the Iron Blood battle steel blinded the eyes of the non-humans. Murong Qingfeng, a human. After the fall of the deities, the trial field opened again. It was the first time that the human clan ranked first on the Iron Blood battle ranking list. Looking at the names under the first rank, including Murong Qingfeng, the human race actually occupied 3 of the top 10 names: Tuoba Zhan and Li Yu. This was also the first time ever. Suppressing the unparalleled excitement in their hearts, the sword of Gojoseon of the human race continued to look down. They saw the names of the other 5 divine princes between the 10th and the 50th place. Moreover, they saw Chu Mu's name in the 90th place. The human race actually had 9 people ranked in the top 100 of the Iron Blood battle ranking list. Even the god of Underworld clan, the strongest clan of the 100 clans, didn't achieve this in their best performance. 9 people ranked in the top 100. Although this didn't seem to have any benefits, there were actually other secrets. The Iron Blood battle ranking list was also secretly related to the fight for luck. Luck was everywhere, and it didn't favor any clan or any person. To be favored by luck was the luck and ability of a clan or a person. The Iron Blood battle steel was more or less connected to luck, and was a derivative of luck. Every time one was ranked on the Iron Blood battle steel, he would be favored by luck, and the clan he belonged to would also be favored by luck. The higher the ranking, the more obvious the luck's favor would be. Now, the human race actually had 9 people ranked in the top 100 of the Iron Blood battle ranking list, which was enough to increase the luck of the human race. This was not a good thing for the alien race. In addition to the 9 people ranked in the top 100, there were 12 people of the human race who were also ranked in the Iron Blood battle ranking list. This was also the first time, and it was enough to compare with the age of the god. Especially the geniuses of the god of Underworld clan, they were all very angry. If the ancient bronze door of the land of inheritance hadn't appeared, they would probably have attacked. Relatively speaking, entering the land of inheritance and obtaining the inheritance was the most important thing. In contrast to the anger of the alien race, Chu Mu and the others were full of smiles. Happiness, indescribable, surged in their hearts. The other sword of Gojoseon of the human race looked over with respect and admiration. The ancient bronze door opened, and this time, no one fought to enter. Instead, they stepped aside, allowing the 8 divine children and Chu Mu to enter first. Chu Mu and the other 8 didn't decline either. They walked through the ancient bronze door one after another, followed by the other sword of Gojoseon of the human race. It was the same land of inheritance as before. This was the third time the land of inheritance was opened, and it was also the last time. If they couldn't obtain the inheritance this time, then they wouldn't be able to obtain any inheritance in the trial grounds for the rest of their lives, because they wouldn't be able to enter the trial grounds again. Chumu, do you plan to search for the place of inheritance in the land of inheritance first, or enter the underground palace of inheritance directly? Asked the ninth divine child, Feng Guohai. The underground palace of inheritance. Chumu made his decision after some thought. His previous experience had taught him that it was very difficult to find the place of inheritance in the land of inheritance. Since he was qualified to enter the underground palace of inheritance, of course, he had to enter the underground palace of inheritance first to obtain the inheritance. If there was still time, he could come back to the land of inheritance to search for the place of inheritance. Everyone who entered the underground palace of inheritance had a chance to obtain the inheritance. No matter how much time they had, they wouldn't be able to obtain a second inheritance. As for the sword of Gojoseon, who had entered the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking for the first time, they couldn't wait to enter the underground palace of inheritance. To them, there was nothing more attractive than the inheritance in the underground palace of inheritance. This time, the 21 sword of Gojoseon, who had entered the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking, had all chosen to enter the underground palace of inheritance. There were still many statues of different shape. Each statue was vivid and lifelike, possessing a unique charm and aura. I hope you find a satisfactory inheritance. Feng Guohai smiled at Chumu and strode away to search for a suitable inheritance. Chumu quickly set off to search as well. Each statue represented an inheritance. Faced with so many inheritances, the sword of Gojoseon, who had entered the underground palace for the first time, almost got lost. Although there were many inheritances, there weren't many that were truly suitable for them. There was only 1 month left. If they couldn't find a suitable inheritance within this month, it would be a tragedy. Chumu didn't dare to waste any time and began his search immediately. Whether the inheritance was suitable could be determined by sensing. The stronger the sensing ability, the clearer the degree of sensing. Sensing the statues one by one, Chumu didn't find a suitable inheritance. However, he wasn't in a hurry. When he had entered the underground palace of inheritance for the first time, it had taken him 5 to 6 days to find a suitable inheritance. Now it was just the beginning. The 21 sword of Gojoseon entered the underground palace of inheritance. Compared to the enormous underground palace of inheritance, they were like a drop in the ocean. Once they separated, it was basically impossible to meet each other. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. A few sword of Gojoseon had found suitable inheritances and began to accept them. In fact, among the many statues, there might not be only one suitable inheritance. The inheritances that were found later might be even better. However, some sword of Gojoseon couldn't wait any longer. Once they found a suitable inheritance, no matter what, they chose to accept it. To them, as long as there was a suitable inheritance, it was fine. Anyway, the inheritances in the underground palace of inheritance were at least left behind by saint-level experts. On the 6th day, Chumu finally found a suitable inheritance. The statue in front of him emitted an aura that made Chumu's heart throb. It made the divine wilderness sword energy in his dantian want to burst out. Traces of barren aura floated around the statue. The statue, with its hands behind its back and its head facing the sky, seemed to be the center of the earth, the ruler of the world. With it as the master, everything was barren. Looking at the statue and feeling the aura around it, Chumu's eyes revealed a look of excitement. He was sure that this was a suitable inheritance for him. It was extremely suitable for him. There was no need to hesitate any longer. He chose this inheritance. The power of his divine sense was released. In an instant, it enveloped the statue in front of him. Under his full concentration, Chumu could only feel that the world in front of him was rapidly changing. The world was changing, and the world was changing. The wind and clouds changed, the tides rose and fell, flowers bloomed and withered, and the vicissitudes of life. The earth was changing. The earth split open, seawater poured in, lakes formed, and the earth collided. Hillsides rose and turned into mountains that pierced the clouds and stood tall on the earth. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the boundless earth. The figure stood tall, as if it had existed since time immemorial and could not be destroyed. The figure stood at the center of the earth. The figure trembled slightly. An indescribable aura of desolation spread out from its body. In an instant it was as if a storm had struck. Suddenly, on the earth, with the figure as the center, layers of ripples appeared and spread out. However, upon closer inspection, one would realize that the ripples did not spread out. Instead, they gathered from all directions. The ripples seemed to be endless. They gathered from the boundless earth and entered the figure's body from its feet. Suddenly, the aura emitted by the figure grew stronger and stronger. It was as if it could shatter the heavens. The mountains in the distance gradually collapsed, as if they had lost their power. Chapter 1176. In the vast starry sky, the enormous sword vanguard slowly moved. The cold body of the ship reflected a deep luster like autumn water. Dozens of Sword of Gojosian gathered in the combat division. Their auras were condensed as though they had experienced countless battles. Their expressions were determined and their eyes were bright. Good, good, good. The combat division chief, Yun Feng, said 3 good words in a row. His face was full of smiles and he was excited from the bottom of his heart. His sharp eyes seemed to see through everything. He swept his gaze across everyone and finally stopped on Chu Mu. After looking carefully, Yun Feng nodded repeatedly and looked very satisfied. These dozens of people were the members of the Sword Vanguard Combat Division who had entered the Trial Realm and left alive. It had to be said that the Trial Realm was indeed very dangerous. When they entered the Trial Realm, there were more than 100 people in the Combat Division. Now, only 50 or 60 people had returned. The death rate was 40%. Of the members of the 8th Battle Division, only 7 of them had returned. Unfortunately, Vice Captain Hua Yi did not return. However, Lin Kai, a 7-star Sword of Gojosian, had returned alive. Furthermore, his cultivation had increased and he had broken through to become an 8-star Sword of Gojosian. However, Chu Mu did not see him in Iron Blood City. It seemed that Lin Kai had not entered Iron Blood City and was moving around the outer regions of the Trial Realm. There were more than 200 people who had entered the Trial Realm. However, only 100 or so had returned. At least 100 people had remained inside. This was a sad matter. However, those who had returned alive were all different from before. Their cultivation had increased and they were stronger. This was something worth celebrating. As long as the Sword of Gojosian who had returned alive continued to cultivate, their future would be bright. The Trial Realm would be an extremely precious treasure in their cultivation life. After returning to his room, Chu Mu went straight to his resting room and leaned against his bed. The trip to the Trial Realm had been tense. There was basically no time for him to relax and rest. Now that he had returned to his room and was in a relatively safe environment, Chu Mu finally let out a sigh of relief. On the path of cultivation, there was a balance between tension and relaxation. Blindly being tense over a long period of time would only bring about negative consequences. He laid down and emptied his mind. He didn't want to think about anything and fell asleep peacefully. He did not dream, nor was he disturbed. By the time he woke up naturally, more than 20 hours had passed. Chu Mu opened his eyes. There was no light radiating from them, only clear and limpid. He slowly got up and stretched his body. Cracking sounds came from all over his body. He felt refreshed and all his exhaustion was gone. It's time to cultivate, Chu Mu muttered to himself. He could not wait any longer. The third opening of the Land of Legacy was the final legacy within the underground palace of legacy. Divine Wilderness Great Emperor. It had to be said that Chu Mu's luck was really good. Entering the trial realm, he obtained the Dragon Elephant Fruit and 3 Source Fruit. Entering Iron Blood City, he entered the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking list. Entering the underground palace of inheritance for the first time, he patiently searched for a suitable inheritance and obtained the Shattering Void Great Emperor's inheritance, as well as the Shattering Void Secret Manual. Cultivating the Tao of Space, his future was bright, and his progress was not bad. Portable Mini-Space, minor 8 styles of Shattering Void, Void Pierce Sword Chi. It was worth mentioning that because his grasp of the power of space regulation had reached the microscopic level, the size of his portable mini-space had also reached the level of 10 cubic meters, increasing by 10 times. The second time, although he could not enter the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking list and enter the underground palace of inheritance because of the foreign races, although he spent more time in the Land of Legacy, his luck was really good. He actually found the ancient star tomb, obtained the inheritance of the astral calamity technique, and directly cultivated to the first level. The 11th level was enough for him to cultivate for a very, very long time. After cultivating to the 11th level, he would consider the next step. The third time, he re-entered the Iron Blood 100 battle ranking list, and broke into the top 100. Entering the underground palace of inheritance again, he spent a few days searching and finally found a suitable inheritance. Chu Mu felt that it was a very suitable inheritance for him. Divine Wilderness Great Emperor. Divine Wilderness Great Emperor's inheritance. At the beginning of the inheritance, Chu Mu was actually a little regretful. Soon, that regret disappeared, like clouds blown away by a storm. Joy emerged and turned into ecstasy. The complete Divine Wilderness inheritance. After receiving the inheritance, Chu Mu knew that everything in the Heaven Wasteland Underground Palace and the Divine Wilderness Mystery Realm was just a small part of the Divine Wilderness inheritance. And because of the mutation in Chu Mu's Dantian, he finally merged the Sky Wasteland Sword Art and the Divine Wilderness Sword Art into a new cultivation technique. In fact, it already existed and was even more complete. That was the Divine Wilderness inheritance. In the Age of Gods, the strongest great emperor of the human race, the Divine Wilderness Great Emperor, was stronger than the Shattering Void Great Emperor. He was known as the swordsman closest to God. His fame made the foreign races tremble in fear. He was not only the strongest great emperor of the human race, but also one of the best among the great emperors of the 100 races. There were only 1 or 2 who could be comparable to him. From the beginning, when he was still in the ancient Sword Continent, Chu Mu had a relationship with the Divine Wilderness Great Emperor, and it continued to deepen until today, when he completely came into contact with him and received the complete inheritance. The complete inheritance let Chu Mu know that the self-created Divine Wilderness Sword Art that he previously cultivated was actually just a superficial knowledge. Now, what Chu Mu needed to do was to recultivate the Divine Wilderness Sword Art. The most complete Divine Wilderness Sword Art that was truly passed down by the Divine Wilderness Great Emperor. After receiving the complete Divine Wilderness inheritance, Chu Mu had already decided to recultivate. The so-called recultivation was to cultivate from the beginning. Recultivation was to cultivate from the beginning, step by step. If he wanted to recultivate, he had to abolish his current cultivation. Abolishing one's cultivation was an extremely painful thing. Not only was it physical pain, but it was also mental pain. Think about it, after going through so many hardships, experiencing countless life and death situations, and spending a large amount of time, he had finally cultivated to the 6th firmament of the creation realm. Especially for someone like Chu Mu, whose cultivation talent was not high enough, he had to raise his cultivation again and again. Furthermore, due to the changes in his Dantian, every increase in cultivation required more energy. Only he could understand the hardships involved. If it were anyone else, they might hesitate because of this, but Chu Mu did not. He did not hesitate in the slightest. Firstly, he had already mastered the first stage of the astral calamity, and his physique had reached the peak of 9 stars. Coupled with his second-level sword force, divine-level sword intent, and the power of spatial laws, the power of the lesser 8 forms of the void shattering was many times stronger than the ordinary peak of 9 stars sword of Gojoseon. He could easily kill someone with a single strike. In fact, the 6th firmament of the creation realm did not increase Chu Mu's strength significantly. After all, the difference between the level of sword origin and the level of body refinement was too great. In a situation where he did not engage in close combat, with his cultivation at the 6th firmament of the creation realm and his various other means, he could at most fight against the 9 stars sword of Gojoseon. It was far from comparable to body refinement. With a strong attainment in body refinement, he had powerful strength that was enough to protect himself. After entering the cultivation room and closing the door, Chu Mu sat on the futon and waved his hands. His fingers continuously tapped on his dantian. Under the vibration of powerful energy, it penetrated into his dantian and gathered into one, instantly shattering the divine wilderness sword origin lake in his dantian. Chu Mu's face suddenly changed, quickly turning from red to white. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. After the powerful divine wilderness sword origin was shattered, the void-pierced sword chi within was also shattered. It mixed with the shattered divine wilderness sword origin and rushed out of his dantian, wreaking havoc in his body. Waves of intense pain came from every part of his body. It was as if his organs were shattered, his meridians were shattered, his bones were shattered, and his muscles were torn apart. It was as if he was enduring extreme torture. With a groan, Chu Mu gritted his teeth and endured. He had already imagined that crippling his current cultivation would be an extremely painful thing. He did not expect that the pain would be several times more intense than he had imagined. Fortunately, his willpower was incomparably firm and he could still endure it. His body had reached the peak of the 9 stars because he had cultivated the astral calamity cultivation method. The shattered and rioting divine wilderness sword origin was not damaged at all. The reason why he felt such pain was because the void-pierced sword chi had also shattered. The shattering of the void-pierced sword chi was out of Chu Mu's expectations. However, he no longer had the chance to regret. He could only cultivate the complete divine wilderness sword art again before condensing the void-pierced sword chi again. Amidst the popping sounds, streaks of golden energy shot out from Chu Mu's body. They shot out like extremely sharp swords, causing Chu Mu to look like a hedgehog. The energy contained traces of fragmented faint silver and possessed an extremely terrifying power. If an ordinary 9-star sword of Gojoseon was hit, he would most likely be injured or even killed. Chu Mu was unable to control the energy that shot out. After 10 breaths, all the energy in his body shot out. Immediately, he felt a sense of emptiness, an unprecedented feeling of weakness. But in reality, Chu Mu's physique was still as strong as ever. The feeling of weakness was only caused by the dissipation of the divine wilderness sword origin and the emptiness of his dantian. Because the void-pierced sword chi had been shattered and merged with the divine wilderness sword origin, his dantian had suffered some shock. This caused Chu Mu to be unable to cultivate immediately. He could only rest and let his dantian recover naturally. During the rest time, Chu Mu cultivated the astral calamity cultivation method. The first level had been mastered. Next, he had to cultivate the second level. The first level corresponded to the peak of the 9 stars, while the second level corresponded to the peak of the third level of the Nirvana realm. In other words, once he cultivated the second level of the astral calamity, his physique would reach the peak of the third level of the Nirvana realm. But to cultivate the second level, there was a prerequisite. He had to break through and reach the Nirvana realm. Nirvana was a complete rebirth, as if he had been reborn. Chi refinement sword cultivators could achieve nirvana, so could body refinement sword cultivators. However, it was more difficult for body refinement sword cultivators to achieve nirvana. One needed to reach a certain level and make sufficient preparations. At least for now, Chu Mu did not have any plans to break through to the nirvana realm. Because even if he did, there was 100% chance of failure. The outcome of failure was death. Chapter 1177. After 3 days, the turbulence in his dantian finally calmed down. This meant that Chu Mu could finally start cultivating again. In these 3 days, Chu Mu had been tidying up what he had obtained from the trial world. He had also systematically organized the Divine Wilderness inheritance. The inheritance of the Divine Wilderness Emperor was called the Divine Wilderness Sword Manual. It was a very familiar name. The Divine Wilderness Sword Manual had a total of 3 parts. The first part was the Divine Wilderness Sword Art, which was the cultivation technique to cultivate the Divine Wilderness Sword Chi and Divine Wilderness Sword Origin. The second part, which Chu Mu had already practiced, was the Divine Wilderness Sword Seed Art. The third part was a secret technique, the Divine Wilderness Origin Returning Secret Technique. There was no sword art, but it was enough. The Divine Wilderness Emperor's fame was created by the 3 parts of the Divine Wilderness Sword Manual. Now, Chu Mu was about to start cultivating. He had already mastered the Divine Wilderness Sword Seed Art. The Immortal Sword was in his middle dantian, and the Divine Wilderness Origin Returning Secret Technique required him to cultivate the Divine Wilderness Sword Art to the Sword Origin level before he could start cultivating it. Chu Mu's dantian was empty right now, without any cultivation to speak of. However, his realm was at the 6th layer of creation realm. As long as he had enough energy, he could quickly recultivate back to his previous realm. Sitting down cross-legged, Chu Mu began cultivating, starting from the Sword Chi realm. With a thought, he immediately followed the Divine Wilderness Sword Art circulation path and began cultivating. In an instant, the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth in the cultivation room was immediately attracted by Chu Mu's divine remembrance and surged into Chu Mu's body. This was the benefit of having a powerful divine remembrance. Otherwise, when he was in the Sword Qi realm, he would not be able to absorb the aura from the outside world into his body. Compared to the heaven-earth Yuan Qi, the Sword Qi's level was a little low. Luckily, Chu Mu's meridians were strong and his spiritual sense was strong. He could control the heaven-earth Yuan Qi and slowly convert it into Divine Wilderness Sword Qi. In the blink of an eye, he reached the first stage of Sword Qi. As the heaven-earth Yuan Qi was refined, his cultivation continued to increase. Second stage of Sword Qi. Third stage. Fourth stage. Soon, he had a huge breakthrough in his cultivation and entered the Qi transformation realm. The Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth continued to flow into his body and be converted into Sword Qi. Once again, he broke through to the Qi Si realm. As for the 9th revolution realm, Chu Mu's physique was many times stronger. There was no need for any tempering and he could directly cross over. Soon, his cultivation base entered the origin realm again. At the origin realm, Sword Qi would transform into Sword Origin. After all, the quality of Sword Origin was far superior to Sword Qi. It had already surpassed the standard of Yuan Qi. 2 hours later, he had reached the peak of the origin realm. Another 2 hours later, he had broken through to the small success of the deity condensation realm. After reaching the god congealing realm, the speed at which one's cultivation increased became even slower. Chu Mu also temporarily stopped cultivating. With a thought, a strand of divine wilderness sword essence was drawn out and condensed on his finger. It was golden in color and was somewhat different from before. It emitted a desolate and old aura that was ancient and pervaded the air. Chu Mu's divine sense penetrated into it and carefully sensed and analyzed it. A smile appeared on his face. The divine wilderness sword essence was similar to before in all aspects. However, it was the true divine wilderness sword essence because it had the characteristics of desolation. However, he was only at the small success of the deity condensation realm, so it was not obvious. Once he fully recovered, it would be very obvious. He stood up and cultivated his sword art. His sword arts had reached the late stage of the deity realm. Another step and he would reach the peak. At that time, Chu-Mu would have the qualifications to break through to the sword domain. He also spent some time cultivating the flying heaven sword art. However, in comparison, the flying heaven sword art's help to Chu-Mu was very small. It was only able to drive a few flying swords to attack. The power was not strong and could only be used as a distraction. For experts, the effect would gradually weaken, unless one could use the flying heaven sword art together with the flying heaven sword art. It was too difficult to create one's own sword art. Chu-Mu could not do it at the moment. However, he could not find it on the exchange list. He could only give up temporarily and strengthen himself in other aspects. After cultivating his sword arts, Chu-Mu started cultivating the divine wilderness sword art again. This time, he took out a low-grade elemental core. Using a low-grade elemental core was enough for him to cultivate at the small success stage of the deity condensation realm. The medicinal power of the low-grade elemental core dissolved and surged. It quickly transformed into the divine wilderness sword essence and increased rapidly. Chu-Mu planned to consume 3 origin fruits after recovering his cultivation to increase his grasp of the laws. A small specially made starship approached the sharp sword at an extremely fast speed. After transmitting a message, it entered the interior of the sharp sword art. Welcome, 8th Divine Envoy. Deputy Commander Li Duan and the ministers and deputy ministers of the 3 major departments all welcomed the person who walked down from the specially made starship. They had already received the news. It was a middle-aged man. However, his sideburns were slightly gray. His long hair draped over his shoulders and his hands hung naturally. He walked down from the starship as if he was taking a stroll. There was a slight smile on his ordinary face, and he looked very gentle. Deputy Commander Li, ministers. The middle-aged man nodded at the crowd and greeted them. His voice was as gentle as his expression. 8th Divine Envoy, please. Li Duan gestured with his hand. The ministers and deputy ministers all made way for the 8th Divine Envoy to walk past them. They were all very puzzled. Why did the 8th Divine Envoy come to the sharp sword art? The sharp sword art was a part of the Sword Art Judgment Army and it belonged to the Heavenly Sword Hall. The 8th Divine Envoy also belonged to the Heavenly Sword Hall. However, they each had their own duties. It could be said that there was no connection between them. Therefore, the arrival of the 8th Divine Emissary was unpredictable. However, no matter what, he was still a member of the Heavenly Sword Hall. Moreover, in terms of status, the status of the Divine Envoy was much higher than theirs. Otherwise, they would not have come together to welcome him. In the Heavenly Sword Hall, there was only one place that had Divine Envoys. That was the main hall. Only the main hall was qualified to have Divine Envoys. Divine Envoys were one of the many powers in the main hall. They were also one of the top powers in the main hall. Every Divine Envoy was a powerful saint. They had all heard of the 8th Divine Envoy's fame. However, he was one of the top 3 Divine Envoys in the main hall. He was extremely terrifying. The 8th Divine Envoy did not beat around the bush and directly stated his purpose for coming. However, this made Li Duan and the other ministers and deputy ministers look at each other in dismay. For a moment they did not react. He came for Chu-Mu? Especially the minister of the combat division, Yun Feng, was extremely surprised. He immediately looked at the 8th Divine Envoy and asked, 8th Divine Envoy, did Chu-Mu do something bad? The others also became nervous. No matter what, Chu-Mu was a member of the sharp sword art. They would naturally be concerned about him. He did do something, the eighth divine envoy said calmly. The eighth divine emissary said in a neither fast nor slow manner. From his tone, it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Immediately, the eighth divine emissary smiled and said, "However, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, a very good thing." Everyone gradually relaxed. As long as it wasn't something bad for Chu Mu, it was good. Eighth divine envoy, what good thing is it? Li Duan asked. Do you know what happened in the Trial Realm's Iron Blood City? The eighth divine envoy asked. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, indicating that they did not know. This time, in the Iron Blood City, the geniuses of the 100 races clashed. In the end, our human race suppressed the foreign races, the eighth divine envoy said. Li Duan and the others were shocked. After the era of the gods, the Trial Realm disappeared and was found again. From the time it opened until now, 10,000 years had passed. The human race had never had such a remarkable achievement as suppressing the foreign races. The best they had done was to be ranked in the top 10 of the Iron Blood battle ranking. Moreover, there was only one person. Thus, when they heard the eighth divine envoy's words, Li Duan and the others felt as if they were listening to a story from the era of the gods. Shortly after, they all reacted. With the eighth divine envoy's status, he wouldn't come here to tease them. Eighth divine envoy, could it be, could it be? Yun Feng became excited. That's right. In this trial realm, before the third trial realm of inheritance opened, our human race had a total of 21 people ranked in the Iron Blood battle ranking. Moreover, 9 of them were ranked in the top 100. Even in the era of the gods, this kind of achievement is one of the best. The eighth divine envoy laughed. It was a laugh from the bottom of his heart, even though he had laughed many times after hearing this news. Of the 9 people ranked in the top 100, other than the 8 divine sons of our heavenly sword hall, there is Chu Mu. The eighth divine envoy's words were like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the hearts of Li Duan and the others. The explosion made them feel dizzy. Their minds stiffened for a moment, and they couldn't react. The eighth divine envoy didn't say anything else. Instead, he waited for everyone to digest the information. After a while, everyone slowly digested it and reacted. However, they were still a little uncertain. Eighth divine envoy, is the Chu Mu you are talking about our Sword Edge Combat Division's Chu Mu? Yun Feng asked. His tone was still uncertain. That's right. The eighth divine envoy's tone was incomparably certain. Immediately, Yun Feng's heart trembled violently. He didn't know how to describe his current feelings. Originally, in his opinion, Chu Mu had entered the trial realm, obtained some benefits, and came back alive. In fact, Chu Mu had indeed come back alive. Moreover, his cultivation had reached the 6th heavenly layer of creation. His appearance had changed, and his essence, qi, and spirit had increased. It was considered a good harvest. He didn't expect that what he saw was the most superficial. Chu Mu was actually ranked in the Iron Blood battle ranking. Moreover, he had entered the top 100. There were only 1,000 names in the Iron Blood battle ranking. There were countless geniuses from the 100 races, and the human race was ranked below the top 10. With all these conditions combined, being able to enter the Iron Blood battle ranking was already a great thing, even if it was the last place. It was unimaginable to enter the top 100. Even Deputy Commander Li Duan, who had entered the trial realm, couldn't enter the Iron Blood battle ranking. He deeply understood the difficulty of entering the Iron Blood battle ranking. All of a sudden, an impulse surged in everyone's hearts. They wanted to know more. They couldn't wait to find out what had happened in Iron Blood City in the trial realm.